Chapter 1. Who are you? When Fujio said this, the person in front of her seemed to be struck by lightning. He rushed out the door and shouted, "Doctor, doctor! My young master's brain is damaged." Young master? Was he referring to her? Fujio sensed that something was wrong and furrowed her brows. In a trance, it seemed that something was trying to rush into her brain. She shook her aching head, and her confused eyes looked at the dressing mirror in front of her. The mirror reflected a young man. He was tall and slender, about 17 years old, with a pair of dark eyes with clear and smooth lines. The most perfect thing about him was his skin, which was as white as jade porcelain. From the bridge of his nose to his chin, he was impeccably beautiful. His messy silver short hair didn't make him decadent, but added to his luxurious temperament, like an oriental vampire aristocrat. The young man also wore a black ear stud, which emitted a faint glow. Ostentatious, arrogant, handsome. This was what everyone would feel at first sight of the young man. If she wasn't looking in the mirror, even Fujio would think that the person in the mirror was a boy. However, she knew very well that no matter if it was her or this body, they were both girls. Fujio looked at herself in the mirror and suddenly closed her eyes. After a few seconds, she opened them again, and her eyes were unfathomable and mysterious. Young master. The person who had just run out ran back in with a doctor in his hand. Quick, check on my young master, see if his brain is damaged. The doctor held a medical lamp and looked at Fujio's eyes. Fujio sat there calmly and didn't resist. She was receiving constant information from her brain. Although this body had the same name as her, the circumstances were completely different. She was a girl, but her mother had dressed her up as a boy since she was young. But no matter how much she raised her, this body still liked men. And in high school, girls were attracted to men. She was attracted to men too much, but she didn't know how to be reserved as a girl, so she just circled around handsome guys when she saw them. That was why she was treated as a gay and sent to the hospital. When Fujio remembered all this, her face didn't look very good. She had once been able to break into the Pentagon with a computer. In order to catch her, many Interpol officers had resorted to seducing men and seducing women. Even 10 black men wouldn't be enough to beat her up. Being beaten up to the point of being hospitalized with serious injuries, really made people want to laugh. Fujio did laugh, but her eyes were still cold, and there was a hint of evil in her deep black eyes. Young master. Chen Xiaodong looked at her in confusion. Fujio glanced at him casually. Then, she raised her hand to push her silver hair to the back of her head, revealing that devil-like perfect face. Even his voice was perfect and impeccable. It was neither too low nor too high. It had the unique texture of a teenager, gentle and magnetic. It was obviously a very ordinary action, but when she did it, there was an extra sense of arrogance and domineering. Chen Xiaodong was stunned. He felt that something was different about the young master. How should I put it? In the past, the young master would easily lose his temper and treat money like it was nothing. His entire body was filled with the aura of a nouveau riche. Chapter 2. For the next 3 days, Fujio stayed in the hospital for checkups. It wasn't until the 4th day that she stopped pretending to be a pretty boy in a hospital gown. Fujio had always been a receptive person. But there was one thing she needed to figure out. Who had plotted against her from behind? Fujio narrowed her eyes, and the temperature in the ward dropped to the extreme. Then she smiled again, and the curve of her lips was so perfect. Just like her, she was full of pretenses. She was a hacker, codenamed Z. As long as you gave her a computer, she could do anything you wanted her to do. And such a person was reborn into a high school student's body. Young master, I've brought all your clothes over. Do you want to wear this one or this one? Chen Xiaodong looked at the pretty boy by the window as if he was asking for praise. These two are the latest Givenchy models. Fujio supported herself with one hand and jumped down from the balcony easily. She had a lollipop in her mouth, and her silver hair was messy and lazy, but her eyebrows were extremely beautiful. Her thin lips were slightly curled up, and her left hand was in her trouser pocket as she slowly walked towards Qin Xiaodong. That lazy look made her look like a demon deacon from a comic book. So cool. Qin Xiaodong was almost stunned. Young master's current look, not to mention girls, even boys. No, he couldn't think like that. Thinking like that would undoubtedly encourage young master's bad habits. He didn't forget why young master was beaten up and sent to the hospital. If boss knew that young master was still thinking about young master Qin, he would definitely break young master's legs. Is there anything else besides these two? Fu Jiu looked at the gorgeous colors in front of her and frowned. Qin Xiaodong immediately lowered his head and pulled out the clothes. I also brought young master's favorite boy brand. Boy. Are you sure you didn't bring the cheap Taobao brand? The original owner's taste was quite unique. Fu Jiu looked at the colorful clothes in front of her, and her fingers unbuttoned her hospital gown. She said in a faint voice, "Go get my school uniform." Huh? Young master, I thought you didn't like to wear school uniforms. Qin Xiaodong's eyes widened. He was obviously shocked by Fu Jiu's words. Fu Jiu glanced at him and only said two words, "Go get it." Without any explanation, his tone was so cool that it made people's legs go soft. Was this really the nouveau riche young master of their family? Jiang City No. 1 Middle School had a long history and strong teachers. There were many powerful people in the school, such as top scholars in the arts and sciences. Of course, there were also a small number of students who didn't want to make progress. Fu Jiu was a typical example. Compared to the rich second generation, she was even more unpopular because she always liked to show off. She drove a sports car to school and made herself look like a coal boss. Although her family did mine coal, it was obviously inappropriate for her to bring her father's business to school. Also, the way she dressed, she always thought that she was very handsome, but in the eyes of others, she was just a piece of trash. Come to think of it, Fu Jiu hadn't done anything particularly outrageous. However, such an existence was simply a joke. Who would like it? But today, the homeroom teacher looked at the handsome young man in front of her and asked uncertainly, "Fu Jiu?" "It's me, Teacher Chen. I'm here to cancel my leave." Fu Jiu smiled faintly. Teacher Chen was stunned for a moment and said, "Okay, I got it. Go back to class and don't fight anymore. Focus on your studies." "Okay. Okay." Teacher Chen looked at the young man who turned around and left in surprise. How could one stay in the hospital change so much? Chapter 3. Stepping into the familiar campus again, Fu Jiu had an indescribable feeling. The loudspeaker was still broadcasting, and she didn't know if she needed to do radio gymnastics. Who is that handsome guy? Is he new? Why haven't I seen him before? The girl pulled the people next to her to look at Fu Jiu. He just smiled at me. Those canine teeth are so sexy. Wait a minute, why do I find him so familiar? It's him. He's Fu Jiu. When they got closer, the girls were completely dumbfounded. How could such a handsome guy be that nouveau riche Fu Jiu? But he did enter their class. Fu Jiu put her bag on the wooden table, crossed her long legs, and sat down. She was just about to take out her notebook. There was a loud bang. Someone pulled out the chair next to her and looked at her with a gloomy face. "Take your stuff away, I don't want to stay with you a second longer, you pervert." This person was Fu Jiu's deskmate, Jiang Feiyang. He was the most handsome guy in Class D. He was good at basketball and was popular with girls. Even Fu Jiu had pursued him before. Fu Jiu immediately felt a headache when she thought of these three words. However, she didn't like it when people were rough in front of her. "You don't want to stay?" Fu Jiu's voice was very calm, and she looked at him carelessly with her hand on the side of her face. "Then get lost." "What did you say?" Jiang Feiyang immediately made his move. He wanted to pull Fujio's collar over. But he didn't expect that as soon as he got up, he would fall on the table, and his chin hurt. And Fujio, who was standing on the side, looked at him with a smile. I don't like to fight with people recently, so Jiang Feiyang, we should get along well, what do you think? Everyone thought they were whispering to each other like good buddies. Only Jiang Feiyang knew how painful the arm on his back was. His eyes were red, and he gritted his teeth. He couldn't believe that he lost to that little weakling. That's weird, Fujio would blush for a long time when Jiang Feiyang and Fujio talked. Why is it different today? Nothing strange, right? Now Fujio has her eyes on young Master Qin, and she doesn't want to look at anyone else. Ha, how shameless. He even dares to touch young Master Qin. Just you wait, someone will take care of him. Amidst the noise, Fujio lowered her eyes and flipped open the physics book on the table. Jiang Feiyang, on the other hand, swung his arm and snorted coldly. You heard that? You won't be able to live for long. Forget about young Master Qin, even those school guards from young Master Qin can kill you. Hearing that, Fujio smiled again and looked up from her physics book. Whether I die or not is a matter of the future, but if you say one more word, I will remove your jaw. Jiang Feiyang, damn it, why did he feel like he was stunned? The look in that little trash's eyes just now was really scary. The bell rang, and Fujio could finally take a nap in peace. However, when it was lunchtime, trouble still came. A group of female students in short skirts surrounded Fujio in the middle, and their words were full of sarcasm. How did the Fu family produce such a gay nouveau riche? How disgusting! Fujio, who was already hungry, was stopped like this. Her eyes started to turn cold. Chapter 4. That kind of smile somehow made the hearts of the girls who came to watch him beat erratically. But the people surrounding her were different, especially the girl named Huasiyu. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Fujio with disgust. Last time, I warned you to stay away from young Master Qin. I thought you would listen to me, but I didn't expect you to still not learn what it means to teach young Master Qin a lesson. You even dare to come to this cafeteria. Do you want to be drenched in water? She had been dissatisfied with this nouveau riche for a long time. She felt nauseous at the thought of someone like him thinking about her beloved idol. Drag him into the toilet. I will let him know today where he should be and where he shouldn't be. Huasiyu was famous for her fierceness in school. She would usually use such means to deal with people she didn't like, and it would make them suffer in silence. It was said that they would even have their heads pushed into the toilet. This time, Fujio was in trouble. Sigh, she just came out of the hospital, and now she had to go back to the hospital. Just as people were thinking about this, they saw Fujio put one hand in her pocket, lifted her leg, and kicked Huasiyu to the ground. Bam! That action was so fast and ruthless that people couldn't see how she did it. When Huasiyu fell, her internal organs hurt. She looked like she couldn't believe it, and she was extremely angry. You pervert, how dare you kick me? Fujio, who was scolded like this, calmly opened the bottle of mineral water in her hand and walked towards her. She put her hands in her trouser pockets and curled up her thin lips. How you treated me in the past, I'll return it all to you now. Walala. As Fujio's voice fell, the whole bottle of mineral water was poured on Huasiyu's head. Huasiyu was stunned at first, and then she went crazy. Fujio. Just you wait. Do you think the school hunk will let you go just because you are so disgusted? The whole school is disgusted by you, and he just doesn't want to do anything to you. Hearing that, Fujio chuckled softly. She bent down and reached out a hand to pat Huasiyu's face. She looked very handsome. It's no big deal, girl. Listen up, I have time to torture you anytime. Huasiyu was stunned. You. Huasiyu wants to tear someone apart again. Shoop, Fujio pressed on her pale lips with her index finger. I don't have a good temper, so don't force me to beat people up. Also, even if I like men, I won't like that young Master Qin you're talking about. If he wants to come, I'll accompany him anytime. Fu Jiu walked out of the cafeteria as if nothing had happened after throwing out these explosive words. How should she put it? She didn't want to stay in noisy places for long. After she left, two slender figures appeared on the second floor of the cafeteria, where the view was the best but not everyone could go. One of them leaned on the railing, raised his chin at the slender figure in the shadows behind him, and said meaningfully, "The person who chased after you and said that he wouldn't marry anyone but you at the beginning of school is now saying that even if he likes men, he won't like you. May I ask young Master Qin, how do you feel now?" The person who was called was tall and handsome. He was leaning against the large glass window with his slender legs crossed. He lowered his head to look at the book in his hands. Behind him was the scenery of the entire school, which was dazzling and dazzling. Chapter 5. Young Master, are you okay, young Master? As soon as Fu Jiu got downstairs, she saw her little butler, Qin Xiaodong, running towards her, panting. His eyes were full of anxiety. Are you hurt anywhere? Did Hua see you and the others? Before Qin Xiaodong could finish his sentence, Fu Jiu said, I beat him up and sent him back. What? Qin Xiaodong felt like his ears had problems after running all the way here. He asked with difficulty, young master, you didn't get beaten up. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Do I look like someone who gets beaten up? The point was that you did look like that before. Qin Xiaodong muttered in his heart. He knew that his young master was a little different after he woke up. First of all, his temperament was very attractive, but that didn't include the fact that he could deal with Hua Siyu and the others. Did you see young Master Qin just now? Qin Xiaodong asked carefully. Fu Jiu stretched lazily. Nope. That's good. Qin Xiaodong heaved a sigh of relief. Fu Jiu felt strange. Why did these people seem to be afraid that she would run into that young Master Qin? So what if I ran into him? I was afraid that you would hug his leg and not leave. After Qin Xiaodong finished speaking, he looked at Fu Jiu with a little bitterness. Young master, did you forget what you did before? It would have been better if Qin Xiaodong didn't remind her. Once he did, some unbearable memories came to Fu Jiu's mind. It seemed to be in this cafeteria. She fell in love with Almighty Qin's back at first sight. Then, she said that she wanted to be his sugar daddy. Fu Jiu wasn't someone who could be embarrassed, but she wanted to cover her face now. But she was a hacker queen, so she had to prove her innocence. I wasn't the one who wanted to be his sugar daddy. Qin Xiaodong had an expression that said, do you think all the teachers and students are blind? Then, he reminded Fu Jiu, young master, listen to me. Even if you like guys, you can't do it. Even if you like boys, don't do anything to young Master Qin. Our Fu family can't afford to offend him. He's several levels below us. Oh. Fu Jiu listened half-heartedly. Qin Xiaodong stopped in his tracks, and with a serious face, he tried to move him with emotion and reason. Young master, can't you like girls? The boss already has a problem with you because of this. Not only did you lose your pocket money, but you also have to fend for yourself at school. Maybe the company won't be yours in the future and will be handed over to the siblings outside. Young master, aren't you worried? Even if it's for madam's sake, can we not like men anymore? Hearing that, Fu Jiu stopped in her tracks, and a cold light appeared in her eyes. Everything that happened to her in the past was basically revealed to her father by that pair of siblings. In the beginning, Fu Zhongyi treated Fu Jiu very well. After all, she was his first son. But later on, he heard too much of it. Fu Zhongyi disliked Fu Jiu more and more. When he learned that Fu Jiu might be gay, he completely cut off Fu Jiu's source of income. He didn't even want to go home and he didn't even care about Mrs. Fu, who had gone through thick and thin with him. Fu Jiu had no good feelings for such a scumbag. Back then, Fu Zhongyi was only able to set up the company because of her mother's financial support. Now that Fu Zhongyi had everything, he wanted to kick her away. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Chapter 6. Now. What she needed the most was to get some money to buy some electronic parts and assemble a high-spec laptop. She had already checked the computer at home. It was fine for playing games, but if she wanted to hack into a website, there would be flaws. So making money was her top priority. What did you say? Make money? Chen Xiaodong's words shocked the driver. He braked suddenly, and the two of them turned around to look at Fu Jiu as if they were looking at an alien. Fu Jiu was still holding a can of Coke in her left hand. She frowned. What? Is it weird for me to make money? A little. Chen Xiaodong didn't mean what he said. It was too weird. You used to show off your nouveau riche aura by making 1,000 renminbi a day, which made people want to beat you up. Now you are telling us that you want to make money. Aren't you kidding me? Fu Jiu smiled faintly. People have to change. I've been poor lately, so I need to find something to do. Young master. The old driver twitched twice, as if he was very touched. If madam could hear you say that, she would definitely have a good night's sleep tonight. Fu Jiu took a sip of Coke. My mom still has business to discuss in another province, so don't bother her. Making money takes time. Uncle Wang, help me apply for a 2-day leave from school tomorrow. Driver Wang and Chen Xiaodong. You talk for so long just to apply for leave. Young master, if you want to rest at home, just tell us. Why did you lie to us about making money? Chen Xiaodong muttered in a low voice. Hearing that, Fu Jiu sighed helplessly. She realized that no matter what she said, no one around her would believe her. After all, the image of her as a nouveau riche who didn't know anything and only knew how to chase after handsome guys was too deep. But this wasn't bad. She could disguise herself better. That night, on the second floor of the Fu house. Looking through the mirror, one could see a pair of slender and fair fingers moving rapidly on an old-fashioned keyboard. Anyone who played the game regularly would definitely be able to tell that this person had extremely beautiful positioning. There was a loud smack. Big move launched. All the bosses were killed, and the first kill was completed. Holy shit! A professional gamer came. How did you defeat the nether boss? He's not a professional player. I spent money to hire someone to bring me across a small map. I didn't expect him to get the first kill. I was shocked too. Where is that person? I want to hire him too. What's his name? Wasn't his equipment pretty awesome? He doesn't have any equipment. He seems to be a newbie and seems to be in need of money. Who are you trying to fool? How can a newcomer defeat the nether boss? It's true. I just PM messaged him, and he accepted another team wipe job. He's now doing the second one. You guys can check out the game announcement later. As soon as this person finished speaking, the entire server welcomed another first kill announcement. Then the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the 10th time. Every time, the name, Spade Z, would be hung high up on the game's big screen. It was as if special effects had been added to the operation, and the audience's blood was boiling. In the professional company, a cute cat-like youngster shouted excitedly, "Young Master Qin, look at this Spade Z. Too handsome, let's poach him over, poach him over." Chapter 7. He's a newbie, but he doesn't look like a newbie at all. He has 10 first clears, and you only won 9 times back then. Speaking up to this point, the cat-like young man immediately changed his words. He's definitely not as good as you, but he's not bad. With him and you, our supreme alliance will be invincible. Qin Mo looked at the game character on the screen. He didn't say anything at first, but when he saw that person turn his weapon and fire, he raised his eyebrows. Send him a private message. The cat-like young man got the order, and his eyes lit up. He held the plush toy in his hands and sent a friend request to Spade K, who was also Fu Jiu. But what he didn't expect was that, the other party actually rejected his friend request. Rejected? The cat-like young man took more than a 10 million critical hit. His game name was still on the screen, so how could he be rejected? It must be mentioned that the cat-like young man's real name was Coco, and his game name was also the same. His gaming skills could be ranked in the top 10 in the country. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he was a famous professional almighty, and every time he started a live broadcast, he could reach millions of views. How could this person reject his friend request? I must make him add me. Coco, with his yellow curly hair, quickly switched accounts. Captain, what's your password? Chin Mo didn't stop him, and his thin lips parted slightly as he read out a set of numbers. Coco logged into the game page again. As soon as he entered the main page, the whole server was in an uproar. What did I see? It's the Almighty. Damn, it's really the Almighty. Aw. Asking for the Almighty's coordinates. It seems to be hidden, of course, Coco would hide the coordinates. Using the captain's account to log into the game would cause a network crash. Once again, he sent Fujio an identity verification request. Coco held the big white rabbit in his arms, feeling very proud. This time, he was going to kneel down and call him Big Brother. Who knew that he would be rejected again? Rejected again. Spade Z, what the hell are you doing? Coco bit the rabbit's ear and got angry. Is he illiterate? Anyone who plays games knows young Master Chin. The National League was broadcasted live on TV and online. Chin Mo placed his physics book down and placed his right hand on the keyboard. He sent another friend request. I'm Chin Mo. Fujio was testing the dexterity of her fingers, but someone kept sending her friend requests. Seeing that the other party was persistent, Fujio held her lollipop in her mouth and replied lazily, so what? It was still a rejection notification, but this time, there was an additional sentence. After Coco saw the message, he was completely dumbfounded. What does he mean? You know who young Master Chin is, yet you still refuse. Chin Mo narrowed his long and narrow eyes. At this moment, his interest was piqued, and the corners of his lips lifted. It can't be, right? Young Master Chin smiled. He must have seen it wrong. In order to divert his attention, Coco snatched the keyboard. Why didn't you pass? No response. Did the other party go offline? Offline. Coco felt as if he had been tickled by something, but before he could get rid of the itch, the guy who was tickling him was gone. Chapter 8. Chin Mo stood up and extinguished the cigarette in his hand in the ashtray. His upper body was still in the black uniform, and there was a sinister smile on his lips. A lock of black hair hung down from his forehead, blocking his eyes, making it hard to see his face clearly. When he comes online next time, get Fatty to check his IP address. Hearing this, Coco's little face changed immediately. Captain is smart. Let's do it. I'll get everyone in the company to keep an eye on him. I'm just afraid that he won't come online. As soon as he comes online, we'll take turns. On the other side, Fujio was still playing with the money she had earned from the game. She didn't know that she was being watched. The computer's configuration couldn't keep up, and there were simply too many things to complain about. When she was playing games, the computer would make a buzzing sound. The original owner of the body only liked to spend money on things that could be brought out. Things like computers had probably been thrown to the back of her mind, which was why she was in such a situation. Everything Fujio was wearing wasn't cheap. Her phone and tablet were also the latest Apple models. Unfortunately, she didn't have a laptop, and the computer was way too old. The system was from 2 years ago. Even in her hands, it could be a sharp weapon. Fujio didn't want to use her hacking skills right from the start. Although she might not leave any traces, she had always been a perfectionist. Before she was perfectly prepared, she wouldn't come out so easily. 1866. Fu Jiu read the numbers on her bank card. 4 hours of labor might not be as much as what she used to earn in a minute. But that was how Fu Jiu was. She adapted to the environment she was in, and she felt a sense of accomplishment when she spent the money she earned herself. It was impossible to buy all the top-quality components with this amount of money. First of all, she needed a slightly better keyboard. At the very least, it couldn't be like the one she was using right now, where she had to hit the keys one at a time, which seriously affected her hand speed. After school tomorrow, let's go to the computer mall near the school to see if there are any good things. At this point, Fu Jiu suddenly laughed. The handsome face in the bronze mirror in the bathroom showed an evil look. It's really hard to be a high school student who loves to study. As she spoke, she tore off her black t-shirt. Her short silver hair was slightly messy because of her actions, but it was precisely because of this mess that she looked so handsome that it made people want to scream. In the mirror, she saw a pure necklace in the shape of a cross hanging from her neck. The earrings were also black and shone with the luster of a gem. They looked extremely evil. No matter how one looked at her, she looked like a teenager. She moved her fingers and pulled the white cloth in front of her chest, revealing a pair of soft and fair breasts that belonged to a young girl. There was only a pure black letter tattooed on her semicircular chest, Z. Since he was going to study hard, he had to at least put on an act. The next day, Fu Jiu woke up very early. Her hair was still damp, and she looked like a freshly baked beauty. Chen Xiaodong was shocked. "Young master, why are you up so early? I go to school at 8:30 and wake up at 7:30. Is that early?" Fu Jiu said as she put a fried dough stick in her mouth. Chen Xiaodong truly felt that there was something wrong with his young master. Chapter 9. However, Chen Xiaodong didn't forget the task that Madame had given him over the phone. "Young master, if you're really short on money, do a good job on the exam this time. Madam will definitely buy you a big bag. Playing games all day in your room hurts your eyes. Besides, young master, you didn't like playing games before, right?" "Young master, I'm not trying to discourage you, but your idea of approaching young Master Qin through the game is not bad. But young Master Qin was a godly player in the National League. Even if you trained for 10 years, you might not be able to beat him. So you're saying that I'm playing games to chase after that young Master Qin?" Fu Jiu drank a mouthful of soy milk, raised her eyebrows, and asked, "Who gave you this illusion?" Chen Xiaodong's heart ached as he shook his head. "Young master, it's already come to this. It's fine if you lie to old Wang, but don't lie to me. I've been with the Fu family for 3 years. Don't you think I don't know you? When have you ever forgotten to eat and sleep for something, except for a man? Fu Jiu, young master, just admit it." Chen Xiaodong said with a serious face, "As long as you promise Madam to improve 1 rank, I won't tell on you. Forget it, I won't explain anymore. The more I explain, the messier it will be." Fu Jiu could agree to the condition of improving by 1 rank. She held her chin lazily. "What was my rank last time?" Chen Xiaodong, last place. Fu Jiu was silent. After a while, she asked, "Are you sure my mom said that I would only be promoted by 1 rank?" "Yes, Madam said that as long as you get the second last place, she will give you a reward." Chen Xiaodong's expression was very firm. "Fu Jiu, she's definitely my biological mother, I agree. Wasn't it easy to get second last? Even if she wasn't good at physics and chemistry, she still had English and mathematics, which were her strengths as a hacker." Seeing Fu Jiu agree so readily, Chen Xiaodong became worried. "Madam also said that we can't bribe the second-to-last student to let him go to school. Otherwise, the reward will be nullified." Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. "Why bribe? Wouldn't it be better if I just threatened him with my fists?" "Young master, don't joke around. You can't even beat a girl, how can you beat a boy?" Chen Xiaodong laughed and patted Fu Jiu's shoulder. That posture was very similar to Song Xiaobao's. Fu Jiu looked up and slowly put down the chopsticks in her hand. She glanced at him coldly. Chen Xiaodong froze. Why did he feel a murderous aura from the young master? This was illogical. However, it was truly terrifying. Fu Jiu didn't do anything to him. After all, this kid had always been nice to her. Honestly speaking, just how weak had she been in the past? How could she not even be able to defeat a girl? What a waste of such a good figure. No matter what, Fu Jiu still went to school with her handsome face. She was wearing a black and white school uniform, and her school bag was slung over her shoulder in a cool manner. The young man's overly fair face looked like a lush jade bamboo under the sunlight, transparent and alienating at the same time. Many people in the school stopped in their tracks and began to watch. Don't you feel like Fu Jiu has changed? Why do I feel so handsome? Chapter 10. Hearing someone complimenting her, Fu Jiu turned around and smiled. Thank you, you guys are pretty too. That smile, how to describe it, was too flirtatious. The girls who were greeted immediately held their faces. They were burning. Chen Xiaodong was walking behind Fu Jiu, and he looked like he had seen a ghost. Young master, you are flirting with the girls. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Is there a problem? The girls are so cute. Didn't you say that you were born to love men? Chen Xiaodong lowered his voice. Fu Jiu asked lazily, what does this have to do with me flirting with girls? Chen Xiaodong. He was actually speechless. But, young master, when did you learn how to flirt with girls? You used to hate girls so much that you wanted to run away from them. Look at you now. You are simply a master at flirting with girls. Fu Jiu didn't care what others thought of her, especially her desk mate, Jiang Feiyang, who saw Fu Jiu's attitude towards the girls. His eyes widened. What's wrong with this little weakling? Is she trying to steal someone else's girlfriend? Jiang Feiyang's eyes were burning, and he looked like he was going to get restless again. Fu Jiu threw her bag there and looked at him with one hand in her pocket. Jiang Feiyang's aura was getting weaker and weaker. Finally, he shrunk his neck and made way for Fu Jiu. Ha! Fu Jiu chuckled. After she sat down, she unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth, looking like a rich young master. Jiang Feiyang clenched his fists on the table, but he didn't swing them down, because he really couldn't beat the other party. Why did the little weakling who used to chase after him suddenly become a devil? He couldn't live like this anymore. The most handsome guy in class 013 was still troubled, but the English teacher had already walked in. Fu Jiu saw that it was a subject she was good at, so she moved her fingers under the table and pulled out the tablet and keyboard she had prepared. The English textbook was upright, blocking the tablet, and the keyboard was inside the table. She could type blindly anyway, so she didn't need to lower her head. She clicked to enter the game page. Fu Jiu hadn't gone to the announcement page yet, but she saw that the friend request from last time was still there. Chinamo. She wanted to continue rejecting, but Jiang Feiyang, who was next to her, couldn't help but shout, Qin. Young Master Qin. This title swept through the entire classroom like a whirlwind. Who did he just say? Young Master Qin. Young Master Qin is here. Impossible. Without an invitation from the school, the Prince Charming won't always walk around the school. You can't even see him twice a year. Who did handsome Jiang just call out? I don't know. What's going on? Jiang Feiyang was still pointing at Fu Jiu's textbook, but he was actually pointing at the tablet below. His lips were trembling. Young Master Qin, teacher. Before Jiang Feiyang could finish speaking, Fu Jiu interrupted him. She looked at the stage and said, Jiang Feiyang is making a ruckus in class. He is obviously not respecting his teacher. The English teacher was so angry that blue veins were popping out on her forehead. Now that she heard Fu Jiu's words, she immediately said, the rest of the students can study by themselves first. Jiang Feiyang, come with me to my office. Jiang Feiyang felt extremely wronged. He pointed at Fu Jiu and said to the English teacher anxiously, no, teacher, it's him, what's wrong with him? The English teacher walked over and looked at Fu Jiu's upright textbook. Chapter 11. Aside from a ballpoint pen, there was nothing else. The English teacher narrowed his eyes, feeling like he had been tricked by Jiang Feiyang. Fu Jiu's handsome face showed a blank expression at the right time. The English teacher saw this, and he got even angrier. He turned around and said to Jiang Feiyang, it's fine if you don't pay attention in class, but you want other students to take the blame for you? Come out now. Jiang Feiyang couldn't figure out how he ended up like this. That little weakling was clearly playing games, so how could he withdraw his hands so quickly? And, that was obviously young Master Qin's in-game name, wasn't it? Could it be that he was mistaken? After sending off the annoying person, Fu Jiu lowered her head and took out the tablet again. What made people frown was that Jiang Feiyang's call just now made her make a mistake, and she actually accepted him as a friend. Just as Fu Jiu was about to delete the person on the keyboard, she seemed to have sensed something, and her black pupils suddenly shrank. Then, there was an arc that seemed like a smile that wasn't a smile. I never thought that there would be a day when someone would come to hunt me. Interesting. As Fu Jiu said this, she moved her fingers quickly, and the page on the tablet changed in an instant. There was no game, only strings of code constantly surged out from the screen. Different from Fu Jiu's relaxed state, the huge fatty on the other side was typing furiously on the mechanical keyboard in his hands. His face was covered in sweat, and finally, with a loud bang, he laid down on the ground and slammed the table fiercely. Motherf asterisk cur, he got away. What did you say? Got away. The cat-like young man took off the headphones of the live broadcast, leaving millions of fans behind. He turned his head, and his face was full of surprise. How could he get away from your hands? You are a famous hacker in the country. Fatty, don't joke around. Captain is here. Fatty wiped his face. His eyes were bright from the excitement of meeting an expert. He ignored the cat-like youngster and turned to Qin Mo excitedly. CEO Qin, where did you meet such a person? He's amazing. It was just that his reaction was a little slow, and he discovered that I had discovered it a little late. However, it was as if he had turned on a plug-in. Thousands of virtual IP addresses came at the same time, completely covering the real data. Not only that, he actually planted an unbreakable virus on me while wiping away the traces. Amazing, too amazing. I guessed that the computer he was using wasn't very good. Otherwise, even I wouldn't be able to break through his periphery. No, Fatty, tell me first, what's wrong with my computer? Why is the screen black, huh? The cat-like youth bit the rabbit's ear, completely unable to understand what he was saying. Fatty made an "oh" sound and explained concisely, the other party planted a virus in your computer. I don't know how to detoxify it. The corner of the cat-like boy's mouth twitched. In other words, you didn't manage to hack them, and they broke your computer instead? You could say that. Fatty touched his chin, looking rather deep. The cat-like youth. Then why are you so deep? Are you proud of being counterattacked? Qin Mo didn't care about all this. He put down the company documents, crossed his long legs, and outlined a smooth curve under his chin. Tell me about the periphery you broke through. Chapter 12. In the classroom, Fu Jiu's thin lips parted slightly, and she spat out 2 words, KO, hacker term, meaning successful hunt. She cracked her wrist with a faint smile, put down the English book, and returned to being the most ordinary high school student who couldn't be more average. No one knew that she had just defeated a professional hacker. In the middle of the 3rd class, Fu Jiu was still thinking about what to eat during the lunch break. The school broadcast sounded above her head, and the voice sounded very excited. Students, in order to recruit talents, your senior, Chin Mo, will be visiting the school on behalf of the Chin group. Before that person could finish speaking, the students started screaming. Chin Mo, the real God's favored one, was born in a good family, had power over 3 provinces, and dominated the esports scene. His usual whereabouts were a mystery, and he never showed up even at school. Whether it was in the team or the company, young Master Chin was always an unreachable existence. If you wanted to see him face to face, you had to watch a large-scale live stream and fight for his existence with nearly 10 million fans. Now he was coming to the school for an inspection. Happiness came too suddenly, and all the students in number 1 middle school were excited. Only Fu Jiu stretched in her chair, thinking, it seems that I don't have to go to class in the afternoon, and I can play a few more games and earn 500 yuan. In order to welcome Chin Mo, the shaded road was very clean, and the school leaders all wore suits. Half an hour later, 3 to 4 top-grade military Hummers drove into the school gate. The black bodies, streamlined design, and low-key luxury couldn't be hidden. Ah! Another wave of excited screams swept through the school, and all the teachers and students rushed in the same direction excitedly. The bodyguards in black formed a warning line, and the people on this side of the warning line all stood on their tiptoes, trying hard to see their Prince Charming's face. Only Fu Jiu stood calmly in the gathering team. She originally thought that with the school leaders coming out to welcome him, she could still earn some extra money in the classroom, but she didn't expect the whole school to gather. Just as Xiaodong said, this young Master Chin's family was indeed several levels higher than the Fu families. After all, he came from a military compound, and his grandfather was a founding father. In fact, Jiang City No. 1 middle school never lacked rich people. Hua Siyu, who liked to bully others, was one of them. In her eyes, Fu Jiu would always be a country bumpkin who couldn't show off in public. That was why she held a grudge against Fu Jiu for hitting her. Hua Siyu didn't know why this guy suddenly became so difficult to deal with. She felt guilty because her family hired someone to teach him a few moves. However, none of that mattered today. She wanted to embarrass him in front of everyone. Hua Siyu's eyes turned and landed on the warning line in front of her. Then, she looked at Fu Jiu, who was standing in front of her and playing with her phone with her head down. Hua Siyu quietly took a step back when no one was paying attention. Pa! He pushed Fu Jiu away. Fu Jiu was still thinking about the parts she needed to buy in the afternoon. Without any warning, she bent forward and crashed into someone's arms. Chapter 13. This scene happened so suddenly that even the bodyguard in black next to him didn't have time to react. Chin Mo only felt something jump into his arms. His left foot stepped back, and his deep, dark eyes sank. CEO Chin. The secretary behind Chin Mo shouted with sweat all over his head. He wanted to pull his CEO away, but it was too late. The moment Fu Jiu lost her balance, her eyes narrowed sharply. However, before she had the time to show her power, the surroundings fell into silence. Was it an illusion? Why was the back of her neck so cold? Instead, she felt something warm under her palms. It was hard, and it felt good. Fu Jiu's movements were seen by the school's leaders, and the dean was so scared that his face turned pale. Fu Jiu. The dean wanted to drag this person out. He didn't expect that this kid would suddenly appear. Didn't I tell them not to let him appear again? Hua Siyu heard this low roar and laughed happily. This time, Fu Jiu, this country bumpkin, was dead for sure. Fu Jiu. Isn't that the guy who wouldn't let go of young Master Chin last time? He really doesn't want to give up. Isn't he afraid that young Master Chin will kill him? There must be something wrong with his brain. It seems that when a man is infatuated, it can make people speechless. Hearing the discussions around him, the one who wanted to cover his eyes the most was Qin Xiaodong. He never thought that the thing he was most worried about would play out in front of so many people. He thought that young master had changed these days. But he didn't expect that it was all a ploy to lower his guard. He shouldn't have stood in class just now. He should have gone to Class D. That way, he could have grabbed young master's leg before he lost his mind and wanted to hug young Master Chin. At this moment, Fujio wasn't so happy. She was also a victim, okay? But looking at everyone's faces, it was certain that they wouldn't believe her. Since she had already done it, she might as well go all the way. Thinking of this, Fujio curled her lips into a smile. She suddenly grabbed the man's collar and moved closer to that cold and handsome face. She said in an evil voice, "Bro, you have a good body." This was flirting. Zhang Xiaodong broke out in a cold sweat. "Young master, you're crazy, crazy. It's fine if you flirt with girls, but you actually dared to flirt with young Master Chin. Don't you know he's a tiger?" No one expected Fujio to say something like that. The cat-like youth was so shocked that he almost bit off the ears of the rabbit in his arms. The school leaders wished that Fujio could disappear right in front of their eyes. Chin Mo's gaze was extremely cold. Compared to the coldness, what made people tense was his viciousness. Looking disdainfully at the world, the aura of a king. Fujio now believed Chen Xiaodong's words. This man was not to be trifled with. But all of a sudden, his face came closer. His noble and handsome face was completely destroyed at this moment, and all that was left was an unsettling sense of oppression. He leaned over, and his cold breath hit the back of her ear. "Fujio, right? Be careful when you go home from school, because it's very likely that someone will beat you until your right hand is broken." His voice was so soft that only the two of them could hear it. Chapter 14. Fight? She had never been afraid of anyone. However, Fujio didn't like to make enemies for no reason. "Handsome, I was complimenting you just now." It wasn't good to ask someone to beat her up after being complimented. Chin Mo suddenly laughed, but his eyes were cold. He looked like he wanted to cut Fujio into a million pieces to vent his anger. "Touching my chest is considered a compliment?" Fujio was speechless. "You're not a girl, so there's no harm in letting your chest be touched." Fujio advised him, "Be magnanimous." Chin Mo removed her hand indifferently, and his voice sounded like it was coming from his teeth. "What a pity, I've never known what magnanimity is." Did he really want to fight with her? Fujio looked at the back of that extremely dangerous figure and shook her wrist, which was a little painful. The sunlight fell on him through the leaves, and it was as if he was surrounded by 1,000 rays of light. He looked noble and luxurious. Just a miss of his aura would make people feel extremely cold. Plus, he was followed by a large group of bodyguards in black. It seemed like there would be trouble in the future. The school leaders didn't expect young Master Chin to let Fujio go so easily. He didn't even ask about it. They were shocked and relieved at the same time. Fortunately, young Master Chin is magnanimous. Who said no? The dean wiped the sweat off his forehead after the false alarm. Only the cat-like young man tilted his head and bit the rabbit's ear in his arms. The captain he knew was always vengeful. The more he didn't get angry, the more serious the consequences would be. Fujio, who just jumped at him, was dead meat. Chin Mo walked in the front, and he still felt that touch on his chest that he had never felt before. This made his eyes sink into an unprecedented depth. It was only a short minute, but the teachers and students felt like it had been a long time. Until Chin Mo's figure disappeared completely, Chen Xiaodong rushed towards Fujio like a gust of wind. His eyes were wide open. "Young master, do you know what you were doing just now? If boss knows about this, he will scold you again. And young Master Chin, he doesn't like people touching him. Are you challenging his bottom line? You even flirted with him. Young Master Chin is different from you. He's not gay." Fujio put her hands in her pockets and denied coolly, "I'm not gay either." "You've already treated young Master Chin like that, you." Chen Xiaodong paused and sighed. Young master, I know that if I were gay, I would also like a man like young Master Qin, but look at the girls around us. None of them are like you, throwing themselves at him and hugging him. Fu Jiu replied with an, oh. Her attitude was really casual, and the corners of her mouth were even curled up. If you put it like that, doesn't that mean that young Master Qin gave his first hug to me? Young master. Chen Xiaodong was really defeated by his own young master. He was still thinking about this at a time like this. Fu Jiu patted his shoulder. I'm just teasing you, but I want to make it clear that I didn't want to rush over and hug anyone. I was just thinking about going to Computer City with my head down, and someone pushed me from behind. I believe you. Chen Xiaodong is extremely serious. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Chen Xiaodong continued, so young master, let's be honest with each other. Next time you want to do anything to young Master Qin, tell me first. Fu Jiu. Chapter 15. Look at Chen Xiaodong. Fu Jiu was in the mood to play with her pet, and she said in a lazy voice, there's something I've always wanted to do. What? Chen Xiaodong asked immediately. Fu Jiu smiled faintly and said, sleep with him. Chen Xiaodong froze as if he was struck by lightning. Fu Jiu reached out and patted his face. That's why I said, don't play with words with your young master, or I might really do something. Be good and go to class. Young master. Chen Xiaodong hugged Fu Jiu's arm. You must be joking, young master. Fu Jiu only smiled and pushed him away. The more Chen Xiaodong looked at his young master, the more worried he was. It's over. Young master used to have a secret crush on me, but now he wants to sleep with me. That's young Master Qin. If I sleep with him, won't I lose my life? Young master, when did you start having such dirty thoughts? On the other side, Chen Xiaodong was going crazy with his head in his hands. On the other side, Fu Jiu looked at the cameras around her and curled up the corners of her mouth. As long as there was an internet connection, it was easy to find the person who pushed her. Fu Jiu put her tablet upright and found a place with few people on the top floor. She connected her Bluetooth keyboard, and as soon as her slender fingers touched the keyboard, she pointed directly at the school's internet center with dazzling finger movements. As she hacked in, images popped up on the screen one after another. There were 32 in total, and they were all displayed in a small window. Now, Fu Jiu's tablet images were synchronized with the school's security cameras in real time. In other words, every camera in the school had become her eyes. She pressed the enter key, and the image was fixed at the previous scene. Fu Jiu unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Her thin lips curled up, and her eyes were cold. Huasiyu. So it's her. But that was nothing. What made Fu Jiu raise her eyebrows was the alarm that came from the network defense wall she had set up in her tablet. She really didn't expect that the person who hacked into her computer before would be so persistent. Fu Jiu narrowed her eyes, and her fingers started moving again. This time, the finger movements were even more aggressive. That finger movement was like an eagle from the desert, ferocious and fast, aiming for the throat. Pa! Another computer's screen turned black. Fatty sat in the school office and looked at his broken laptop. Instead of feeling depressed, he looked at the person beside him with a passionate gaze. Chairman Qin, I found him. Spade Z. Him. The school leaders were confused. Didn't young Master Qin come to the school for an inspection? How did it become looking for someone? Qin Mo's thin lips parted slightly, and he said, specific location. The roof of Block B's teaching block. He had just hacked into the school's network. Fatty was as excited as he could be. He should still be there. Qin Mo didn't stop. He stood up with a swoosh and strode toward Block B's teaching block. The cat-like young master quickly followed with the rabbit in his arms, accompanied by a large group of black-clothed bodyguards. The school leaders did not know what had happened. When they heard Fatty say that someone had hacked into their school network, their faces changed. In the distance, the clattering of the keyboard continued. Chapter 16. He pressed the elevator button. Fatty rushed up to the rooftop with the book in his hand. But there was nothing on it. Not even a shadow. How could this be? CEO Chin. Fatty turned his head with an ugly expression. Spade Z must be here. I can't be wrong. Even if that was the case, where was he? Fatty hurriedly searched for it. Chin Mo walked over, his sharp eyes glancing at the candy wrapper on the ground. There was still some warmth left on it. There is indeed someone here, Chin Mo said, his black military boots crushing the candy wrapper. He stood on the rooftop and looked down at the whole school. His uniform fluttered in the wind, and he said, Spade Z is a student. Translator's note, Spade Z is a student. Translator's notes, F***CK. Fatty exclaimed. You can even guess that? Which teacher would be so bored that he would eat a lollipop? You were looking in the wrong direction. Chin Mo retracted his gaze and looked at him. Fatty really couldn't resist his CEO's suffocating gaze. It seemed like CEO Chin wasn't too happy about not being able to find Spade Z. Fatty touched the bridge of his nose guiltily. This can't be blamed on me. I saw Spade Z's amazing maneuvering and assumed he would at least be a teacher. I never expected him to be a student. Student. That was right. This was a high school, which student was so good that he could compete with him? Fatty, are you looking down on students? I'm still a student, but I'm still better at games than you. The cat-like youngster scratched the wall, unconvinced. Suddenly, Chin Mo raised his hand and glanced at them. The whole place went silent. Something is ringing. Chin Mo's voice was calm, but it carried an absolute order. He threw one word down, cold and ruthless. Find it. The bodyguards in black immediately spread out and started searching around the rooftop. Suddenly, someone shouted, Young master. It's here. It was a dustbin. A pure white iPad Air 2 was lying in the dustbin. It was in perfect condition, without any signs of wear and tear. The sound came from the tablet, and it was very clear when they got closer. This was left by Spade Z. A trace of shock flashed across Fatty's eyes. Chin Mo had never taken anything from the bin before. He arched a brow and reached out his left hand. Immediately, someone presented him with a pair of black gloves. Is it off? The cat-like boy's eyes widened. Why would he leave the tablet here? Fatty's expression darkened. He discovered that we were looking for him, so he simply cut off all traces. How cunning. Don't tell me he's using a tablet to fight me. So what? The cat-like teenager didn't understand. What computer was important? There was a serious look in Fatty's eyes. Compared to an ordinary notebook, the operating speed of a tablet computer is at least 5 times slower. If he's using a tablet, have you ever thought about what would happen if he were to use a notebook one day? The cat-type youth was shocked. Fatty thought of that possibility, and his eyes began to lose focus. I can't even predict his approximate position. Why isn't such a powerful person in the rankings? Who was he? Is he a high school student? Chin Mo stood at the side. His legs were long and slender, his side profile was elegant, and his eyes were as deep and cold as an ancient pond. His black fingertips slid across the tablet screen, and suddenly, a number lit up. Chapter 17. This was also left by Spade Z. Because he knew we were looking for him. Was that why he provoked them so arrogantly? The cat-like young man carefully observed his captain's expression, and he didn't dare to ask the last question. The fatty also nodded weakly, not daring to look up at his CEO. At this moment, Chin Mo's cold and ruthless eyes were as intense as the deep sea at night, dangerous and deep. Since he was born, he was used to walking sideways. Someone who could make him fall. Keep looking. The 3 words that did not have the slightest warmth immediately made the black-clothed bodyguard tense up. The whole school's top management was in a panic. At the same time, at the corner of the corridor, Fujio disconnected the hotspot on her phone that was connected to her tablet. She looked up and smiled. K.O. The person who was looking for her must be very angry now. Thinking about this, Fujio's smile became even wider. She liked it when people couldn't do anything to her even if they didn't like her. However, without the tablet, she had to buy some spare parts for a small laptop as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient to do anything. Speaking of which, she had to make money first. As for that Huasiyu, she would deal with her when she was free. Fujio stuffed her phone into her pocket, held the lollipop in her mouth, twisted her wrist, and successfully blended into the crowd of people getting their meals. She was back to being the most unpopular high school student. However, Fujio's plan didn't come to fruition. As soon as she finished lunch, she was called to the office by the dean of teaching. Fujio frowned. Those people shouldn't be able to find her, so why? Besides the dean of teaching, there was another person sitting in the office. He was in his 40s, wearing Armani and a big gold watch. When he saw Fujio walk in, his face was full of anger. Who else could it be other than her scumbag father? Mr. Fu. The dean of teaching glanced at Fujio, and his face was full of disdain. It's not that I always call you over, it's just that what your son has done has tarnished our school's reputation. How can a good boy like a man and throw himself at a man? That's CEO Chin we're talking about. Is it something he can do as he pleases? Fu Zhongyi was already filled with anger, and when he heard the name, CEO Chin, his expression changed. He raised his hand with fierce eyes, and it looked like he wanted to hit Fujio. Why did I raise such a shameful person like you? Dad, don't be like this. Brother didn't do it on purpose. The person who stopped Fu Zhongyi was none other than his illegitimate daughter, Fu Shuai-er. Fu Shuai-er took after her mother. She looked pure and beautiful, but she was very cunning. Fujio had already experienced her previous tricks. Every time she spoke, it seemed like she was on her side, but in fact, the more she spoke, the angrier Fu Zhongyi would get. Not on purpose. So you can't control yourself? Fu Zhongyi's eyes turned cold as he looked at Fujio. The Fu family didn't need a shameful person who liked men. Moreover, he had offended the Qin family this time. It was hard to say whether his business would be affected in the future. Fu Zhongyi thought about his youngest son again. They were both his children, but why was there such a big difference? Since this shameful thing failed to live up to expectations. Then don't blame him as a father. Since you can't change your bad habit, then from today onwards, you are no longer my son. Chapter 18. Did he want to cut ties with her? Fujio's eyes were cold, and she only said 3 words to Fu Zhongyi, up to you. Okay. Fu Zhongyi's chest heaved up and down. He turned around and said to the teaching director, Teacher, you heard it. I can't control this kid anymore. Whether the school wants to expel him or expel him, it has nothing to do with me anymore. This was what Chen Xiaodong heard when he rushed over. He looked at Fujio with a shaky gaze. Fujio acted like nothing had happened. She lowered her voice and said, I hope you don't regret what you said today. What I regret the most is giving birth to a shameful person like you and marrying that mother of yours. Fu Zhongyi threw these words and left. He was so angry that his neck and face turned red. Seeing this, the director pushed up his glasses. He couldn't even bear to talk to Fujio anymore. Go pack your things. With your qualifications, you can only get into a vocational secondary school. The school will recommend you there. Let's go, let's go. Fujio was speechless. After saying that, he waved his hand, as if Fujio was a piece of trash in a stinky ditch. Young master. Chen Xiaodong went up to him with a face full of worry. Fu Jiu didn't linger. She just curled up her lips and went to the classroom with a cold look in her eyes. The whole school stood by the railing and watched her walk down the stairs with her textbooks. They were either pitying, mocking, or gloating. Hua Siyu was the happiest among them. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and laughed. This is karma. Some people just want to die. Look at this, he can't even go to school. He deserves it. I heard that he is going to a vocational high school. The people behind Hua Siyu also laughed. Maybe that kind of place is suitable for people like him. Everyone there is trash, ha ha ha. Hearing this, Fu Jiu stopped and suddenly moved forward. After what happened last time, Hua Siyu was already scared by her. She took a step back while trembling. However, Fu Jiu didn't have any intention of making a move. Instead, she only said one sentence, "Do you really think that no one knows what you did? This is ridiculous." Hua Siyu had messed with so many people, so she didn't know what a guilty conscience was anymore. She looked at Fu Jiu viciously. Fu Jiu smiled, her thin lips evil. In that case, we can only publish it online. This was the last thing Fu Jiu said before she left the school. Hua Siyu didn't take his words seriously at all. He was just a nouveau riche, and even his father didn't want him anymore. How could he be arrogant in the future? Today, Chen Xiaodong was unusually quiet. It was as if he was afraid of saying something that would agitate his young master. Fu Jiu, on the other hand, was very relaxed. Her fingers slid back and forth on her phone. The video of Hua Siyu pushing her had already been saved. Young master. Before getting out of the car, Chen Xiaodong picked up a call and turned around to say to Fu Jiu, "Madam rushed back overnight because of you. It seems like she hasn't even eaten yet. When you see her later, don't argue with her anymore." Speaking up to this point, Chen Xiaodong was worried that his young master would be disgusted if he said too much, so he added in a low voice, "Madam doesn't have it easy either, I know." Fu Jiu put down her phone indifferently. Chen Xiaodong thought that there was something wrong with his ears. "Young master, what did you just say?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. "I said that I know my mom doesn't have it easy. What's wrong?" Chapter 19. Fu Jiu actually knew that her relationship with Mrs. Fu was bad. After all, she still had the original owner's memory in her head. At that time, she didn't know anything. She was very depressed because of her cross-dressing as a man. She felt that everything was her mother's fault. Her mother was greedy for money, which caused her to become like this. Plus, her father bought her whatever she wanted, unlike her mother who always told her not to do this or that, and always warned her to be wary of Fu Shui. She didn't stop at that time. She even said that her mother was the most vicious person in the world, thinking so badly of everyone. The relationship between mother and daughter had been bad since childhood. No matter what Mrs. Fu said to her, she would only snort coldly. And Mrs. Fu came from the countryside, so some things couldn't be changed. After she went to school, she looked down on her mother more and more. She got angry easily, didn't care about eating etiquette, and was careless with everyone. All these made Fu Jiu feel very embarrassed in front of her classmates. She even thought that if her mother dressed up like Fu Shui's mother and wasn't so fat, maybe her father wouldn't have left them. More and more past events came to her mind. Fu Jiu held her forehead. She was really a scumbag before. When she entered the door, she was faced with a middle-aged woman. She was very fat, and she was talking on the phone with her chubby hand. "Hello, is this Director Zhang?" "It's me, Honghua, Fu Jiu's parent. Can you do me a favor in my son's case?" Yes, you're right. I didn't educate my child well enough." Fu Jiu could hear the director's voice over the phone. It was like he was scolding a child. He was scolding her mother. He said, "You people from the countryside don't know how to take care of your children. You caused such a big mess. What can I do? Actually, everyone has pride. He Honghua's mother hated to hear people say that she was from the countryside in such a tone. Fu Jiu still remembered that one time, a shopping guide also spoke to her in such a tone. He Honghua rushed up. So what if I'm from the countryside? People from the countryside earn money with their own hands. Did I owe you money or something? Did I treat you badly? How can you look down on people from the countryside? Who's not from the countryside 3 generations ago? At that time, He Honghua was so confident, just like the heroines in ancient novels. But now, in order to protect her future in school, He Honghua smiled and apologized the whole time, saying that the other party was right. This was all for her sake. Fu Jiu didn't know what to feel. She just walked over with one hand in her pocket and the other in her mother's palm. He Honghua turned around and looked at her in shock. On the other side of the phone, Director Zhang was still keeping her in suspense. It's not impossible for your son to come back, but we're halfway through the procedures. Everyone needs to be bribed. You guys from the countryside probably don't understand this, but that's how the school is. You should think about it. If you really want him to come back, you should give him something. Not everyone can stay in a good school, right? Chapter 20. Hearing Fu Jiu's words, the director of teaching immediately got angry. Fine, fine, fine. Fu Jiu, you're awesome. Our school can't handle such a student. Listen to me, even if your mother begs me, I won't be able to. Trash like you can go wherever you want. Pa. The call ended. Only then did He Honghua react. She was still holding on to Fu Jiu's arm. Although Fu Jiu was a girl, she was more than 1.7 meters tall, a head taller than the short and chubby He Honghua. You child. Why are you so insensible? He Honghua was so anxious that she forgot to be angry. She just wanted to lower her head and make another call. But Fu Jiu hugged her waist and said softly, Mom, it doesn't matter if I can't go to that school. You don't have to be like this. He Honghua's hand froze. It had been a long time since her daughter called her mother. She didn't know when it started, but they always quarreled whenever they met. She knew that her daughter did not want to see her and did not want her to go to their school. Hugging her like this and calling her mother was something that happened many, many years ago. He Honghua couldn't believe her ears. Fu Jiu smiled at her and turned her face to the person behind her. My mom hasn't eaten yet. Let the auntie cook some dishes and make some sweet potato porridge. Yes, young master. Chen Xiaodong received the order and immediately ran to the kitchen. In fact, he was also shocked. Since when did young master care so much about madam? In the past, young master would have yelled at madam in such a situation. Then, both sides became unhappy. It was common for people to smash their phones. But ever since the young master came out of the hospital, he felt as if he had turned over a new leaf. When He Honghua sat down, she was still in a daze. It wasn't until Fu Jiu put some food into her bowl that she realized it was real. He Honghua turned her head and looked at Fu Jiu's silvery white hair. Her hands trembled as she picked up the chopsticks. She deliberately controlled the speed at which she ate. He Honghua knew that her daughter didn't like the way she ate. Fu Jiu tilted her head and looked over. That face was a little too handsome. Her eyes fell on the rice that He Honghua picked up bit by bit, and she understood. Without a word, she picked up the bowl, mixed some vegetables with her chopsticks, and took 2 big mouthfuls of rice. Her cheeks puffed up, and she looked up at He Honghua with a cute smile. Eating with mom is delicious. He Honghua looked at Fu Jiu and couldn't help but cover her mouth, her eyes turning red. Fu Jiu put down her chopsticks and sat next to her. She put her arms around her shoulders and wiped He Honghua's tears. Mom, I was wrong in the past. I won't do that again. He didn't say anything else, but He Honghua couldn't calm down for a long time. Fu Jiu looked at this middle-aged woman who had never thought of giving up on her despite her constant disdain. She cursed herself once again. The mother and daughter had buried the hatchet, and He Honghua was really happy. She asked Fu Jiu what she wanted, and she would buy it for her. Fu Jiu knew that although He Honghua ran a business, she didn't make as much money as Fu Zhongyi. Fu Zhongyi had a wild mistress outside, which made it hard for He Honghua to make a living in the business circle. They all laughed at her for being rough and not being able to control her man. Plus, with her family background, she would have a harder time than others. Mom, I don't lack anything. It's your business that's hard to negotiate, so you should take a break. Fu Jiu massaged He Honghua's arm. He Honghua heard her daughter's words, and her heart warmed. She was afraid to say something that would ruin the peaceful atmosphere they had worked so hard to achieve, but she couldn't be at ease if she didn't say it. Jiu, I know you don't like to study, but people need knowledge. Mom will find a way to let you go back. You. Chapter 21. Whether she would go back or not would depend on her mood. He Honghua didn't take Fu Jiu's words to heart, thinking that her daughter was just comforting her. But she didn't know that Fu Jiu took action that very night. Young master, where are you going so late at night? Chen Xiaodong hurriedly followed Fu Jiu. Every time his young master was unhappy, he would go to the nightclub and get drunk. Although his young master didn't say anything this time, who would feel good about being suspended from school? He understood. If his young master went to the nightclub again, he wouldn't tell madam. But what Chen Xiaodong didn't expect was that his young master would reply in a flat tone, Internet cafe. Internet cafe. Chen Xiaodong was stunned. Fu Jiu skillfully took out her ID to let the boss open the computer, and then put on her headphones, looking very handsome. Go buy me a bag of lollipops. Ah. Chen Xiaodong was still confused. Fu Jiu took out her wallet and put it in his hand. She turned on the computer, looking very cool. Chocolate flavored, and 2 bottles of water. We'll stay up all night. Stay up all night. In the internet cafe. What was young master trying to do? Chen Xiaodong really didn't understand. Fu Jiu took the opportunity when he went out to quickly type on the keyboard. She asked the boss to open a computer that cost 10 yuan per hour. Many people didn't know that sometimes the computers in internet cafes that were specially used for playing games had very high specs. With the computer running as the foundation, Fu Jiu only took 10 seconds to hack into the school's network. All the staff information appeared on her screen in an instant. She used the search engine and locked on to Director Zhang. She quickly changed the game, and her fingers nimbly typed on the keyboard. Using her own computer as the host computer, she used the powerful network to control the entire internet cafe. She even controlled the computers in more than 10 internet cafes at the same time. Tens of thousands of computers were operating at the same time, and they automatically served her. She performed a powerful virtual IP filter just to find Director Zhang's network. It was also on that day. Several internet cafes' computers had the phenomenon of code jumping randomly at the same time. So much so that people stood up and began to type on the keyboard randomly. F***CK, boss, what's going on? I can't even play games. Is he poisoned? At first, the owners of the internet cafes thought that they were poisoned. They couldn't even reboot, so they quickly called the technicians to fix it. In the entire internet cafe, the only computer that was still working was Fu Jiu's. Just when everyone was about to go crazy, Fu Jiu appeared with her headphones on. Her side profile was as beautiful as a painting, and her silver hair fell down and covered her eyes. Only those black earrings shone coldly in the night. For such a large-scale network attack, it was necessary to avoid the network security system. Fu Jiu typed on the keyboard. Her fingers were still beautiful and dazzling. She made a turn and locked Director Zhang's IP into the USB drive. Finally, all he needed to do was to insert a small virus. Bam! K.O. Fu Fujio narrowed her eyes and pressed the publish button. Amidst the loud noise in the internet cafe, she put on the hood of her black coat and stood up coolly. Before she left, she didn't forget to smile at the boss of the internet cafe. "Boss, thanks." The owner of the internet cafe didn't have time to respond to her. He was still playing with the internet with his head down. The strange thing was that the computers were working again before the technicians arrived. What the hell? Chapter 22. Young master, why did you come out? Chen Xiaodong had just finished his work when he saw that Fujio was about to leave. Didn't you say you were going to pull an all-nighter? Fujio played with the USB in her palm. It doesn't work. Let's go home. Chen Xiaodong blinked and said with a serious expression, why do I feel that young master was deliberately sending me away? Hearing that, Fujio looked back at him and curled up her thin lips. I didn't expect you to be so smart. Chen Xiaodong thought, is it really okay to be so mean to him? Let's go, I'll take you to eat a bowl of noodles. Didn't you say you were hungry? Fujio hooked her left arm around Chen Xiaodong's neck. Chen Xiaodong was shocked and looked at Fujio very seriously. Young master. Huh? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Chen Xiaodong's face was full of seriousness. Even if young master treats me very well, I won't turn gay for young master. So, young master, don't play tricks. I won't accept unspoken rules. Fujio, unspoken rules? Who? You? Chen Xiaodong let out a long sigh. I understand. It's easy to develop feelings after being together for too long. Moreover, after what happened to young master, it's hard not to have such thoughts. What kind of thoughts? Fujio crossed her arms and looked at him, letting him continue. Although Chen Xiaodong felt a chill, for the sake of his integrity, he decided to tell the truth. Cough. It's the kind of thinking that you want to sleep with a man. Fujio laughed and pulled him over again. Xiaodong. Young master, you can talk, but don't touch me. Chen Xiaodong's face turned red. After all, the young master was really too handsome. Fujio looked down at him. Even if I wanted to sleep with a man, do you think I would sleep with a man shorter than me? Chen Xiaodong. A critical hit that caught him off guard. Height had always been Chen Xiaodong's sore spot. But this also meant that young master really wanted to sleep with men. Chen Xiaodong suddenly remembered what Fujio said before, and his heart skipped a beat. Young master wants to sleep with young master Qin. If madam knew about this, she would not be able to sleep again. In reality, the person who wasn't sleeping was Qin Mo. He sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, the lights of the entire city behind him. In front of him were 3 top-grade alien computers, pure mechanical keyboards and subwoofer headphones. These 3 computers together cost about 200,000 yuan. The cat-like youngster, Coco, was sitting not far from Qin Mo. He had just finished his live broadcast with the rabbit in his arms. He didn't know if he should stay or leave. No one dared to leave without CEO Qin's permission. Coco thought for a moment and decided to remind him. Captain, it's already 11 o'clock. I think Spade Z knows we're looking for him, so he doesn't dare to go online. So, Captain, shouldn't we go to bed first? Qin Mo looked at the game interface on the screen. It showed that Spade Z had accepted his friend request. If a person was afraid of him, would they have accepted the friend request? Qin Mo coldly extinguished the cigarette in his hand in the ashtray. He only said one word, wait. Her voice was so cold that Coco shuddered and shrank back. He knew very well that this was definitely the first time a proud son of heaven like his captain had been fooled, and it was also the first time someone had hugged him. His mood right now was probably murderous. He should just be quiet, that Spade Z was so daring. He fooled the captain like that, and he still dared to accept the friend request. Was he forcing the captain to kill him? Chapter 23. Chin Mo looked up at him, his eyes deep and special. It was obvious how important this news was to him. Fatty turned the laptop in his hand and said excitedly, CEO Chin, just now, several internet cafes in Jiang City went down at the same time. Ordinary people thought it was a coincidence, guessing that some network virus must have appeared by accident, but that's not the case. We hackers all know that viruses don't come and go so quickly. How could the virus just disappear on its own without any antivirus? This was simply a fantasy story. It's most likely that a hacker launched an attack on the network. So I investigated these internet cafes' networks, and indeed found a problem. They weren't poisoned, but someone activated their latent work mode. That means that tens of thousands of computers in Jiang City are all running for one person at the same time. Coco was stunned, and the rabbit in his mouth loosened. Is it that powerful? Of course. Fatty was excited. You don't even know what this means. The person who can do this is at least in the top 3 in the country's hacker world. But there's one thing that's strange. Nowadays, all big hackers have their own laptops for attacking, but the host computer he uses is in the internet cafes. This style is exactly like that Spade Z. After listening to this, Chin Mo didn't have any expression. He crossed his legs, leaned back, and raised his eyebrows. He was like an ancient emperor, noble and lazy. So, which internet cafe's computers is he using? Fatty paused and coughed twice. There are too many virtual IPs, tens of millions of them searching for something at the same time, and they're all using concealment methods. I can't find out. Hearing this, Chin Mo's eyes turned cold. Fatty immediately said, CEO Chin, this Spade Z is really powerful. I am afraid I'm not his match. As soon as he finished, Coco started to pull Fatty's sleeve, telling him to shut up. Didn't he see that Captain was still upset because he was tricked? How dare he say that he wasn't as powerful as Spade Z at this time? Are you stupid? Chin Mo stood up, took the red wine glass on the table, and swirled it back and forth. The liquid in the glass was like blood, with a sinister aura. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with his back to the people. He seemed to be thinking about something, as if the whole city was under his feet. Then, he took a sip of the red wine, and his fair skin was covered with layers of coldness. He's looking for someone. Chin Mo tilted his head. There seemed to be night light swirling in his eyes. Fatty was taken aback. Who? Who else? Spade interrupted. But Captain, how did you know he was looking for someone? Chin Mo held his wine glass, his voice calm as he asked, isn't using tens of thousands of computers to search for someone? Fatty slapped his forehead in annoyance. That's right, why didn't I think of that? A fierce search, this person will become Spade Z's next target. Chin Mo's eyes were as cold as a lake, piercing to the bone. There will be more to this. Keep an eye on the latest news and find him. Yes. Just as Fatty's voice fell. Chapter 24. Chin Mo narrowed his eyes. He put one hand on the table and leaned over to look at the computer. His eyes were dark. Just as he was about to do something, a line of words suddenly appeared in his friend's chat box. Spade Z, Almighty Chin, you are trying so hard to find me. Are you secretly in love with me? After seeing that sentence, the temperature around Chin Mo suddenly dropped to the extreme. Coco and Fatty's mouths were wide open. He. How dare he say something like that? Flirting with Captain. He was really looking for death. But they really wanted to see what would happen next. Coco bit the rabbit's ear excitedly. Chin Mo's voice was cold, and each word was bone-chilling. Turn your faces away. Swish. This time, Fatty's reaction was fast. He immediately turned around, afraid that CEO would catch him looking at the screen. That Spade Z was too Too amazing. Not because of his hacking skills, but because he dared to flirt with CEO Qin like that. Although they knew that CEO Qin couldn't be provoked right now, they still wanted to see what Spade Z would say next. Fu Jiu was indeed typing something. She had a lollipop in her mouth, and her face was full of smiles. Her beautiful slender fingers were flying over the keyboard, and she typed, "I don't like this kind of pursuit, but if you insist, you can try seducing me. Maybe I'll say yes on impulse." Looking at those words, Qin Mo clenched his fists and loosened them. Finally, he picked up the keyboard and typed one word at a time. His eyes were so cold that they could freeze people to death. "No matter who you are, you better start praying that I won't find you." Fu Jiu looked at the chat box and didn't reply. She curled up her lips lazily and went offline while stretching her back. She was in a good mood. On Qin Mo's side, the temperature in the room couldn't go back to normal. At the top of the most luxurious building in Jiang City, the swimming pool on the rooftop was still glowing faintly. Everyone in the team didn't dare to look at their CEO's handsome face. Coco and Fatty weren't afraid of death. They sneaked a peek at the line of words left on the interface, and they were shocked again. Seducing, or seducing CEO. Bang! Coco didn't hold the rabbit tightly, and it fell. Fatty rubbed his face with all his might. After all, these words really hurt his eyes. Coco and Fatty looked at each other. If one day, the CEO, Captain, could also take the initiative to seduce others, they would raise both hands in support of this scene. Qin Mo's face turned colder and colder. Suddenly, he turned his head and said coldly, "The two of you seem to be in a good mood?" No. How could this be? Coco and Fatty immediately denied it. "This Spade Z is too evil, we must find him. In order to see more interesting things, we must find him." Qin Mo smiled again, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "If you can stop smiling when you say this, it will be more convincing." At this point, he slowly said to the secretary behind him, "Give the order, Coco, Fatty, ban meat for a month." "Yes, President." The secretary was very competent and immediately took a pen to sketch. Coco and Fatty looked at each other again. "President Qin. Captain. You can't do this to us." The two of them put their fingers on the wall and looked at the disappearing figure in the distant corridor. They wanted to cry but had no tears. How could they live without meat? Chapter 25. The night was getting darker and darker. Just as everyone was sleeping soundly, a voice suddenly rang out. In the master bedroom on the top floor of the Fu family's building, the sound of typing could be heard. Fu Jiu sat in front of the computer and successfully entered Director Zhang's phone page. There were many payment passwords left on the web page. But Fu Jiu didn't touch them. Perhaps ordinary people didn't know. The real hackers wouldn't steal money from the internet. This was the principle. What Fu Jiu needed was very simple. It was all in Director Zhang's daily chat records. Life is really exciting. Fu Jiu listened to Director Zhang's chat records with a young woman and curled up the corner of her mouth. I wonder what his wife will do when she finds out. Fu Jiu smiled. Her fingers moved and stopped on Director Zhang's message page. It clearly recorded the details of how he asked for illegal fees from the students' parents. Fu Jiu took screenshots of all these things and was about to edit it into a long article. She didn't expect to receive an unexpected benefit. Director Zhang was probably too lonely, so he asked that woman to send him a photo of her sleeping. The woman agreed. Director Zhang looked at the photo, and his voice was a little breathless. "Oh, my little baby, Big Brother is watching the video." Hearing this, Fu Jiu took off her headphones decisively. She was afraid that she would vomit later. But with such a paragraph, the impact would be greater if she posted it. A cold light flashed in Fu Jiu's eyes. Of course, she wouldn't let anyone know that she was the one who posted the long article. There were more than a dozen students in Jiangqing No. 1 middle school. Some of them were poor, some of them didn't do well in exams, and they didn't give him any gifts, so Director Zhang found an excuse to kick them out. Fu Jiu cleverly mixed the video of Hua Xiyu pushing her and what Director Zhang said to her in the office into the case of these dozen students. Then, she used a virtual IP address and posted all the evidence on all the major marketing websites at the same time. Of course, she didn't forget to send copies to Director Zhang's wife and the teachers of all the major schools. A good show needs to be watched by everyone. After saying this, Fu Jiu turned off the computer and walked to the bedside. With her silver hair, she was as handsome and mysterious as ever. The next day, at 9 in the morning, Director Zhang drove into the school on time. He wondered if he was thinking too much. He felt that ever since he got off the bus, every student had been pointing at him. That's him. Guys, look. I've always felt that he's a pervert. He really isn't anything good. Shoo, don't say any more. He's looking back. Director Zhang was baffled. He frowned and pushed the door open. A group of teachers were gathered in front of the computer, looking at something. Dean Zhang had been in a bad mood since the morning. Now that he saw that his subordinates didn't have any work to do, he got angry. Why aren't you guys preparing for class? What are you looking at? As he said that, he pushed one of the teachers aside. When the teacher turned around and saw that it was him, he took a step back with an indescribable expression. Director Zhang didn't care at first, but when he saw the picture on the screen, he immediately grabbed the person's mouse. What is this? What the F***ck is this? Chapter 26. Slander, this is slander. Director Zhang hurriedly smashed the mouse, and it happened to hit the play button. The voice message he sent to his lover yesterday was spilled out from the computer just like that. Instantly, the whole office was filled with his heavy breathing. Director Zhang's face turned pale in an instant, and he slumped into the chair. Now, there was only one thought in his mind. It was over. His teaching career was completely over. The posts on the internet swept through all the headlines like a hurricane, causing the century-old Jiang City No. 1 middle school to suffer unprecedented damage to its reputation. The school leaders took turns to apologize, but it wasn't enough to quell the public's anger. The school actually hired such a person as a director. What did going to school mean to the children? That was their future. For those children who shouldn't have been expelled, could a mere apology be enough to make up for it? After seeing such accusations, the school leaders of Jiang City No. 1 middle school immediately called the students who had been expelled to apologize one by one. Some of those students had already graduated and gone to college, and some of them even directly joined the workforce because of what happened that year. Out of more than a dozen people, only 6 were still high school students. He Honghua was originally worried about her daughter, thinking about who she should find to smooth things over. When she received the apology call, she was completely dumbfounded. She asked the person on the other end of the phone in disbelief, You mean my Jiu doesn't have to leave? That's right, Ms. He. Our school is very saddened by what happened earlier. It was Director Zhang's personal behavior that caused these misunderstandings. Please bring your children back to school on time this afternoon. In order to express our apologies, we would like Director Zhang to personally apologize to these children. At this point, no matter how good Jiang City No. 1 middle school's PR was, it was too late to stop the situation from worsening. The best solution was to be honest. In fact, rather than saying that Jiang City No. 1 middle school didn't do anything to save their image, it was more accurate to say that they didn't have time to do anything. Everything happened too fast and too suddenly. They could only stand up and apologize. After He Honghua hung up the phone, she was so happy that she rushed into Fu Jiu's room. Jiu. Guess what? Your school called, and they want you to go back to school today. Ugh. Mom. Fu Jiu hugged the thin blanket and sat up. Her long legs were fair, and her face was beautiful. Because she had slept for a while, her silver-gray hair was messy, but it didn't affect her handsomeness at all. Instead, it made her look like a handsome young man. The way she rubbed one of her eyes looked cool and cute at the same time. Even He Honghua, his mother, couldn't help blushing. If her Jiu was really a boy, who knows how many young girls would fall head over heels for him. However, girls were also pretty good, they were considerate. He Honghua said with a smile, "Quick, get up quickly. After eating, let's hurry to school." "Good, good, good." Fu Jiu said as she pushed He Honghua out. "Ms. He, please give me some private time to wash up, thank you." "Oh, you." He Honghua was really happy. When she went downstairs, she was bouncing up and down. At this moment, Fu Jiu seemed to have woken up. Her thin lips held a smile as she softly spat out the two words she often used. Chapter 27. In order to express their sincerity, Jiang City No. 1 Middle School invited a lot of media to the scene. Fu Jiu stood in the middle, wearing a pair of faded jeans, a black belt, a t-shirt, and silver hair. She was so handsome that it made people's hearts beat faster. He Honghua stood next to her, and it was easy to see the joy on her face. In fact, this was the first time her daughter had come to their school since she entered high school. Fu Jiu seemed to think of something. She twisted her ear stud with one hand and said in a low voice, "Mom, that Director Zhang will apologize to us later. Just ignore him and let me answer all his questions." "Okay, okay." He Honghua was indeed impulsive, so she naturally listened to her daughter. Fu Jiu and the other 5 students sat together. The reporters were already eager to try. After all, on the internet, everyone was waiting for the follow-up of the incident at Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. Fu Jiu looked at this scene calmly until Director Zhang appeared. At this moment, Director Zhang was no longer as aggressive as before. The shirt he was wearing was wrinkled, and he looked as dispirited as could be. More than that, he was unwilling to accept it. These students were clearly trash who couldn't study well. If they weren't trash, they were poor bastards. Why did he have to apologize to these people? But there had to be an end to this incident. If he didn't apologize, he wouldn't be able to survive in the future. Thinking of this, Director Zhang walked to the front of the row of students and said, "I'm sorry." Those students weren't stupid. Looking at his attitude, they knew that he didn't mean it. So no one said sorry. When Director Zhang saw them like this, he looked up and said to the reporters, "I'm sorry, I've said that too. But reporters, look at these kids, they're all so stubborn. Back then, I couldn't do anything about them. If you want to apologize, apologize honestly," Fu Jiu said and interrupted him coldly. "Director Zhang, what are you talking about?" Director Zhang was agitated by Fu Jiu's words, and he blurted out, "Shut up. If it weren't for people like your mom who came from the countryside and tried to use her connections to stuff money into the school, would this have happened to me?" Fu Jiu laughed and retorted coldly, "It seems that the school didn't call us here to apologize, but to put on a show for everyone to see, right? Otherwise, why is Director Zhang still like this?" "You." Director Zhang really didn't expect that the trash who would wilt after just one sentence from him in the past would become so eloquent. The media captured this scene and kept pressing the shutter button. Director Zhang did not know how to do public relations, but it did not mean that the school could not. Hearing this, a school leader immediately scolded in a low voice, "You are the one who should shut up. These students are all sincerely invited by our school. You should know your place before you speak." This was a warning. Director Zhang understood and lowered his head with a pale face. He clenched his fists and said to Fu Jiu, "It was my fault just now. I've always been in the wrong. I'm sorry for making you lose your studies." Chapter 28. That was hatred. The hatred of every student who was fired by Director Zhang. Director Zhang said stubbornly, "If you didn't steal it, would you return it?" The girl didn't expect that this scum would still say that. She was so angry that her whole body was shaking. Fujio pressed her hand down and said faintly, "According to Director Zhang, it's better for everyone to not return the things they picked up. Because if you are poor, you will be wrongly accused of being a thief." At this point, she looked up, and her silver hair was fierce. "I heard that the school leaders want to recommend Director Zhang to teach in other places. Shouldn't such a teacher be banned?" "You." Director Zhang's fingers trembled slightly. That school leader immediately interrupted him. "No, don't worry. The education industry doesn't want this kind of person." Hearing that, Director Zhang froze. He turned around with an ugly expression and looked at that school leader. He had no more hope. The reporters swarmed over, and someone asked him, "Do you feel guilty?" There were also reporters interviewing the students, and one of them asked, "Since you were wronged, why didn't you say it earlier? Did you want to blow it up?" At any time, there would be such malice. Fujio glanced over coldly. The media colleagues couldn't bear to watch any longer. They pushed the reporter aside and said, "We've all seen that post online. Some people are wronged and fired, but their hearts are still kind. I would like to ask the students, what is it that allows you to maintain such a kind heart?" The microphone was handed to the girl who was accused of being a thief. The girl took it and put it in Fujio's hand, looking at her with bright eyes. Fujio smiled and turned around. She looked straight into the camera, and her eyes were like dazzling lights. "Because we all believe that justice may be late, but it will never be absent." At that moment, the students couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. Yes. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. We have come this far because of this belief. Pack. Qin Mo pressed the remote control of the TV, glanced at his subordinate next to him, and frowned slightly. "Why are you crying?" "When I was young, I didn't know anything except for computers. My teacher told me to study because he thought I didn't do proper work." Fatty rubbed his face as he said, "If Boss Qin didn't poach me, I wouldn't have become a hacker." Qin Mo glanced at the other one. "Rich second generation, don't tell me you were persuaded to study as well." "I'm touched." Coco nibbled on the rabbit's ear. "That bad director deserves to be destroyed. Captain, you should call your mother right now and make sure he can't go anywhere." Hearing this, Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his gaze calm. "I don't have to do anything, someone will make it hard for him." "Who?" Coco was surprised. Qin Mo's slender fingers flicked the silver lighter in his hand. Spade Z. Hearing this, Fatty and Coco immediately jumped up. "Boss Qin, are you saying that Spade Z was the one behind all this?" Chapter 29. Among these students. Coco and Fatty couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Let's not talk about how ordinary these 6 students were. One of them was a gay who had once harassed Boss Qin. How could someone like that be Spade Z? Qin Mo glanced up. In the smoke, that handsome face was faintly discernible. "Are you guys acting strange? Didn't I say before that Spade Z is a student? But how can Boss Qin be sure that Spade Z is among them?" Fatty still didn't understand. Qin Mo glanced at the news page, a fatal sentence. Because only the victim would want to seek justice. Fatty paused for a moment and immediately understood. If the King of Spades was here, the range could be narrowed even more. Because only 4 of them were men. The registered account of the King of Spades didn't have a gender display either. But judging from his style of doing things, he should be a guy. That night, at the Fu residence, Fujio took out the USB. Just as she walked downstairs, she heard He Honghua on the phone. Her voice was loud, as if she was arguing with the other party. Obviously, the result was not satisfactory. Otherwise, He Honghua wouldn't have lowered her hands and stared blankly at a place. Seeing her walk down, He Honghua smiled and said, "Come on, sit down. Mom is stewing your favorite pig trotters with chili and potatoes." Madam woke up at 3 in the morning and stewed it for young master. She simmered it over a small fire. The auntie walked over with the tea. "You can eat it later. It's definitely fragrant and soft." Hearing that, Fu Jiu put her arms around He Honghua's shoulders and said, "Thank you, Mom." "You child, what are you thanking me for?" He Honghua's round face blushed. "Hurry up and get up. How old are you? Why are you still hugging me?" Although he said that, he couldn't hide the happiness on his face. However, at this moment, the phone on the coffee table rang again and again, very ear-piercing. He Honghua glanced at the caller ID, and her smile faded away. She wanted to send Fu Jiu away. Fu Jiu was a smart person. As soon as she saw her mother's expression, she handed her a cup of tea before He Honghua could say anything. She said in a calm voice, "Mom, take it. No matter what happens, I'll be with you." Hearing her daughter's words, He Honghua felt an inexplicable sense of strength in her heart. She extended her hand and swiped the screen open. "Hey, tell them that I, He Honghua, have never mistreated them in the past year. Now that the esports competition is about to begin, do they have a conscience to leave just like that? 100,000 per person. Duze, you're asking for too much. Mr. He, I'm talking to you nicely. Look at you, what's with this attitude?" Duze's tone seemed to be specially used to annoy people. "Fortunately, I left early and followed Sister Qing. People from the countryside are from the countryside. How can they be so short-sighted?" President He, for the sake of my kindness, Duze, will also give you some advice. Hurry up and divorce President Fu. Do you think a fat village girl like you is worthy of fighting with Sister Qing? Pa! He Honghua hung up the phone with a heavy thud, and the phone was thrown out. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and there were too many emotions in her eyes. Anger, sadness, and indignation. Then, she saw Fu Jiu looking at her, and she immediately said, "The pig trotters in the pot should be ready. Mom will get you a bowl." Chapter 30. He Honghua paused and did not speak. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and looked at Qin Xiaodong, who obviously knew the answer. "Tell me, what's going on?" He didn't say anything unnecessary, just like the young master who had just woken up in the hospital that day. Qin Xiaodong was shocked. He couldn't help but say, "It's all because of that third." Fu Jiu tilted her head. Qin Xiaodong walked up and said, "Young master, esports is a big project in Jiangqing now. The Qin group is the leader. Every year, they select some people from the companies under them to join them. Not only do they have to be good at gaming, but they also have to be young enough to make money." Madam had taken a fancy to this, so she had spent money to hire some gaming experts from school. She had provided them with food and lodging and trained them for a year, just so that they could participate in this year's esports preliminary competition. As long as they could stand out in this competition, they would be selected by the Qin group and signed as professional players. At that time, Madam would also get a lot of profits. However, at this time, the 3 groups of agents had poached all the talented players from the company. Now, there were only some ordinary players left in the company. If they continued to participate in the esports competition like this, they would only be eliminated. At that time, not only would the company lose a year's worth of investment, but it would also lose its business license. The third one did it on purpose. At first, Madam could still handle it, but later, young master was fired. The third one told the partner of the company that. "Say what?" Fu Jiu's voice was very calm, and she gestured for him to continue. Qin Xiaodong glanced at He Honghua hesitantly. In the end, as if throwing caution to the wind, he said, "They said that young master likes men and won't be successful in the future." After hearing that, those people decided to withdraw their investments. Madam can no longer maintain the company. Hearing this, Fujio's eyes darkened. Her silver hair was bone-chilling. He Honghua said anxiously, Jiu, don't listen to Xiaodong's nonsense. People have to come up with a solution. Do you think your mother is so easy to bully? Don't worry, no matter how poor your mother is, I will make sure you eat and drink well. Mom. Fujio looked up and smiled. You're wrong. I should be the one taking you to eat and drink. Isn't it just playing games? Me too. He Honghua smiled brightly. I know you know how to play games. Plants vs. Zombies, right? Alright, that's not what the esports competition is about. Come, let's eat first. I still need to make a trip to Huai City. At that time, He Honghua didn't know that Fujio really knew how to play games. After the meal, Chen Xiaodong was stopped by Fujio. Come here. Chen Xiaodong didn't know what was going on, but when he heard his young master speak in such a lazy manner, he felt a chill run down his spine. Young master, you called for me. Fujio closed the esports magazine on her lap and leaned back. Her silver hair fell down, and she said with an indescribable devilish charm, give me the roster of the company's players. Chapter 31. Give it to me. Two very cool words. His voice was cold. Chen Xiaodong immediately turned around and took out some documents for Fujio. Fujio only flipped through 2 pages and went upstairs. Chen Xiaodong didn't know what his young master wanted to do. He listened carefully and heard the sound of the game. That's right. After Fujio got the player information, she logged into Hero and glanced at the rankings of all the regions. She put her finger under her chin and thought. Finally, she moved her fingers and opened her friend's page in the game. She sent a message to Qin Mo, Almighty Qin, how have you been these 2 days? Have you been looking for me hard? At this time, Qin Mo was still sitting in the company, having an overseas meeting. After all, he was in the business of online games, so it wasn't strange for his computer to be on. The atmosphere in the meeting room was extremely cold. A ding sound was heard. The emperor-like man sitting in the middle tilted his head, and a faint light flashed across his deep eyes. He raised his hand, signaling for the meeting to be paused. Not only were the senior executives of the group stunned by this gesture, but even the secretary behind the man was in disbelief. It was important to note that Boss Qin would never have any interruptions during a meeting. Why did he, for a game? But everyone just watched as the handsome man picked up the laptop with one hand and walked out. What's going on? I don't know. There was a whisper in the meeting room. Qin Mo remained in that position, leaning against the wall and looking at the only friend in his friends list, Spade Z. His long fingers paused for a while before he typed on the keyboard. Not really. Fujio looked at those 2 cold words and then looked at his character image. She chuckled lightly and sat on the chair with a lollipop in her mouth. She replied lazily, Almighty Qin, it will be hard for you to find a girlfriend in the future if you say one thing but mean another. Once again, Qin Mo had the urge to kill her. His deep eyes darkened again. His thin lips curled up slightly, and he sent a line of words. You like lollipops, don't you? They taste like chocolate. Fujio looked at the computer screen, and her back suddenly froze. If she hadn't been in her own room, she would have suspected that someone had pressed a camera on her. But when she thought about it carefully, it was impossible for the other party to confirm that it was her. Otherwise, he would have called out her name long ago instead of mentioning lollipops. This man, it was one thing to have a devilish appearance, but he was also so two-faced. But how did he know that she liked to eat lollipops? Could it be, that time on the rooftop? Fujio's eyes flashed, and she laughed. Looks like I need to be more careful next time. Almighty Qin is indeed different from others. He was too difficult to deal with. Since she had to join the Qin group in the end, she might as well strike first. Look, we've been fighting for so many days. Even a dog would have feelings. Fu Jiu continued to type, the weather has been good recently. I believe Almighty Qin already knows that I'm in Jiang City. What do you think, Almighty Qin? Are you interested in coming out to meet me tomorrow? Qin Mo looked at the pure silver laptop in his hands. He thought about many things that Spade Z would say to his question. Or deny or evade. But he didn't expect Spade Z to ask him out. Chapter 32. Qin Mo's eyes deepened, and he didn't reply immediately. Fu Jiu wasn't in a hurry either. She sat on the chair, put her fingers under her chin, and looked at the chat box. After about 5 seconds. Finally, a word appeared on it. Okay. It was from Qin Mo. Fu Jiu wanted to ask more, such as where to meet and how to contact him. But she was interrupted by the other party. I'm still in a meeting. We'll talk about the details later. His commanding tone was cold without the slightest bit of warmth. But, he didn't forget to reply to her during the meeting. The Almighty really cared about her, didn't he? Fu Jiu curved her thin lips devilishly. Okay, I'll wait for you. Qin Mo's eyes flashed over the words, I'll wait for you. He raised his hand and closed the laptop. The secretary followed behind him, his face full of disbelief. Did he see it wrong? Why did he feel like CEO Qin just smiled? By the time Qin Mo walked into the conference room, the executives had already stopped talking. But what was CEO doing during those 10 minutes? They were really curious. It looked like he was playing games. Since when did games become so attractive? Qin Mo didn't look at them. He walked slowly to the expensive leather chair, put down the laptop, crossed his legs slightly, and looked intimidating. Continue. His words caused the higher-ups to calm down one after another. CEO Qin, this is the esports report for this quarter. There are more than 50 companies in the city. The voices in the conference room gradually became quiet. At the Fu house, Fu Jiu sat in front of the computer and thought about it. Meetings needed time, especially at night, so it wouldn't end so easily. She played 2 rounds of games and got the first kill. Then, she took a towel and went into the bathroom. It wouldn't be too late to talk after taking a shower. On the other side, Qin Mo opened his silver laptop again after the meeting. The secretary still stood behind him, not daring to speak or move, but he couldn't control his eyes. Although CEO was a godlike existence in esports competitions, but CEO never chatted with others in the game. Today. What the hell was going on? This was the second time. The second time he saw the CEO typing. Are you still there? This was a message from their CEO. The other party seemed to be offline. He didn't reply. The CEO didn't move either. He just sat there with his legs crossed and looked at the laptop screen. Was the president planning to wait for the other party? The secretary felt that she was shocked again. What kind of person could make the president wait? Yes, I just went to take a shower. Fu Jiu saw the message when she came out of the bathroom. She opened the message with one hand and wiped her hair with the other as she replied. Droplets of water flowed down her silver hair and slid down the side of her face, which was hard to tell if it was a female or not, and into her white shirt. She looked really seductive. Qin Mo sat in the huge conference room. When he saw the reply, he asked curiously, "Are you a girl or a guy?" Fu Jiu paused, and her eyes flickered. Male. After replying, Fu Jiu typed with both hands and added, "What? Almighty Qin, don't tell me you've fallen for me." When Qin Mo heard this, his originally cold black eyes suddenly lit up with a terrifying flame. The secretary standing behind him could not help but cough violently. Chapter 33. This This person really dared to say that. CEO wouldn't kill him out of anger, would he? Secretary Liang, who originally wanted to go home early, decided not to leave. Watching CEO being flirted with was more interesting than watching TV at home. What a pity. As soon as he had this thought, Qin Mo picked up his laptop and threw it at him indifferently. Since Secretary Liang likes to watch the show in the company, then stay here and work overnight. I'll check the results tomorrow. Secretary Liang. CEO, you can't be like this. Qin Mo pressed the elevator button and walked into the team resting area on the top floor. He raised the corner of his mouth, and that smile slowly blossomed, like a peerless ice flower in the Arctic. Fu Jiu saw that there was no reply, so she typed another question mark. Ding. Qin Mo sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, opened his laptop, and saw this message. He typed slowly, I'm not interested in men, but if you were a woman, I would definitely let you have a taste of what it means to like someone. He typed the word, like, very hard. It was definitely not a pure meaning. Fu Jiu understood what he meant, and she blushed inexplicably. She didn't want to fall out with him before they even met. Fu Jiu cleverly changed the topic. When exactly are you free tomorrow? Morning or afternoon? Afternoon. 2 more words. Fu Jiu thought that this man always spoke so little if she didn't provoke him. Fu Jiu looked at her watch. Then wait for me after school. I have my last class at 6, so I can be there at 6:15. The Lanning Cafe near a university. See you there. After saying that, Fu Jiu wanted to go offline. But she didn't expect that there would be another message from the other side. It wasn't warm at all. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Qin Mo's eyes were indifferent. Why do you want to meet? I'm always being chased like this. It's annoying. After Fu Jiu sent the message, she put down her towel and waited for a reply. Of course, she couldn't tell him the real reason online. Qin Mo only replied with a ha sound. It was quite cold, and he obviously didn't believe her. Then, he typed another message. Tell me your contact information. Fu Jiu also thought about this. She didn't want to leave her phone number, so she simply left her WeChat ID. Got it. The other party replied without a single punctuation mark. Sure enough, the words were like the person, arrogant beyond belief. It seemed that this godly CEO didn't want to continue chatting with her. As expected, girls were more popular in the game. But she had seen him anyway. When they went to the cafe, they could just say Qin Mo's name. She was afraid that Almighty Qin would ask for a VIP room at a rich man's place, the kind that wouldn't reveal any information. That's alright, I'll use WeChat again. After making up her mind, Fu Jiu turned off the game and went to sleep. She didn't have the habit of carrying her phone with her, so she didn't know that there were 3 WeChat friend verification messages waiting for her to verify them. On the top floor of the Qin group, outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of the entire city were lit up. Inch by inch, the shadows were reflected in Qin Mo's bottomless eyes. He held a glass of red wine in one hand and looked at his phone screen. His eyes gradually turned cold. Why haven't you accepted my friend request yet? Good, very good. Chapter 34. The next day, Fu Jiu took her wallet and was about to go out in her school uniform. Young master, wait. Driver Old Wang was still eating fried dough sticks. I'll start the car now and take you to school. Young master seems to be up earlier than yesterday. No need, I'll skate over. Fu Jiu stood in front of the door and pointed at the skateboard under her feet. Driver Old Wang was surprised. You're not taking the car. Uncle Wang, you don't have to wait outside anymore. It's autumn, and it's getting colder. You're old, so I can go by myself. As she said this, Fu Jiu's figure disappeared, leaving only her lingering voice. Driver Old Wang froze in place. Was young master concerned about him? Old Wang knew Fujio's previous absurdity better than anyone else. He thought that young master was only trying to get some money from madam, so he behaved so sensibly recently. Who would have thought that young master had really changed? She had changed so much that it made people feel warm in their hearts. 8:00 was the time when the school was the busiest. All kinds of luxury cars were parked at the entrance. This was not strange for Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. Because most of the students here came from rich families, and it was normal for them to compare at this age, so they would ask their chauffeurs to take them to school. In the gap between the rows of luxury cars, a handsome figure dashed past. Vaguely, one could only see the dazzling silver hair. It was Fujio. Her left leg was on the skateboard, and she was wearing a big black headset on her head. Her school uniform fluttered in the wind as she bent her knees, revealing a part of her fair waist. The lines were so beautiful that many girls wanted to take out their phones and take a picture of them. So cool. I thought he was so cool when he was interviewed yesterday. Now he looks even cooler, skateboarding. What should I do? I think I'm going to change my love. Fujio, Fujio. As if she heard the girl's words, Fujio looked back and curled up the corner of her mouth. In an instant, countless girls fell for it. After this incident, everyone's opinion of Fujio had changed. Especially that female classmate, Shui Yaoyao, who didn't have a good family background. She officially returned to school today and requested to be in the same class as Fujio. When he saw Fujio enter the classroom, he immediately raised the steamed bun in his hand. My mom steamed this herself. She asked me to thank you. Because of Shui Yaoyao's action, all the students in the class looked over at Fujio and started discussing. Fujio definitely won't eat her buns. What if she gets a stomachache from eating something unclean? I know, right? Hey, don't tell me she likes Fujio. Gosh, why doesn't she look at herself in the mirror? She's just a big fat pig, and she dares to think about Fujio? Hearing these words, Shui Yaoyao bit her lip in embarrassment. She just wanted to thank him, she didn't want to cause him trouble. But she forgot that she was a joke. Thinking of this, Shui Yaoyao wanted to take her hand back. What she didn't expect was that the young man took off his earphones and suddenly leaned forward. He opened his mouth slightly and bit into the bun in her hand. It's delicious. I haven't had breakfast yet. Thanks. Because he had just started speaking, his voice still sounded lazy and luxurious. Coupled with his smile that seemed to be able to melt the first snow in the world. Chapter 35. At that time, Fujio didn't know. It was because of one small action of hers. From then on, Shui Yaoyao swore that she would protect this young man. Because he protected her, Fujio didn't think she had done anything that moved people. But when people expressed their gratitude, of course, she had to accept it sincerely. Although she was a person who cared about appearance, she didn't like it when people mocked her appearance and body shape. What's wrong with being fat during puberty? It's normal. She went back to her seat with the fragrant bun in her mouth. Fujio turned on her phone. She was going to search for how to learn physics, which was her weakness after all. However, before she could open the web page, 5 verification messages appeared on WeChat. The first one was normal, just like the sender's style. I am Chin Mo, the last 4 were also normal. She was stimulated by the other side of Almighty Chin. Every single one of them was a cold ha, and it was extremely cold. Fujio admitted that she was in the wrong in this matter. But at that time, this man didn't say that he wanted to add her. Fujio paused and clicked accept. Thinking that they were going to meet today and work together in the future, she replied, I went to bed last night and didn't have my phone with me. I just saw your verification message. After sending the message, Fujio subconsciously waited for a reply. But there was no reply at all during class. Fujio, who was as cool as ever, quickly put this matter behind her mind. The physics teacher was teaching, and Fu Jiu was frowning. Was she the only one who thought that this subject wasn't meant for humans to learn? Without the tablet, class became longer and longer. In the evening, the phone in her desk vibrated. Fu Jiu took it out and saw that it was a voice message from Qin Mo. I'm in class, can't listen. She raised her hand and typed, very succinctly. He didn't reply again. Fu Jiu didn't care. After 3 minutes, Qin Mo texted back, change the meeting place. I'll wait for you at the school gate. My car is easy to recognize, you should know. Fu Jiu, she knew. Not only her, but all the teachers and students in the school should have recognized that top-of-the-line military Hummer. Not to mention Jiang City, there was not a second one in the entire 3 provinces in the northeast. That car and the red license plate number were indicative of his distinguished identity. But if that was the case, wouldn't she have to get into his car in front of everyone? This time, Xiaodong was going to go crazy again, okay. She didn't care. Qin Mo tilted his head to look at the words on his phone before sitting up on the bed. He looked like he had just woken up. His dark eyes were still a little heavy, and his white shirt was half open, revealing the man's strong, honey-colored chest. Every inch of it was seductive and sexy, and it was enough to make one's nose bleed. He tilted his head. His hair, which had been trimmed to the point of perfection, slightly covered his eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and replied in a domineering tone, "Don't turn off your phone again." Chapter 36. Even through the screen, Fu Jiu could feel how cold the man's expression was when he typed this sentence. He really couldn't turn off his phone. Turning it off would delay things. It was past 5 o'clock. The people on the top floor kept looking up at the time. Why isn't CEO Qin here yet? I think he waited for someone's WeChat for most of the night. Whose WeChat is so important? I don't know. While they were talking, the door was pulled open with a swoosh. Qin Mo walked in with his shirt half open, and his black hair was like an arrogant, ink-black night. He was so cold and cool that people instantly stopped talking. But his body was so good that many people started swallowing their saliva after taking a look. Coco came over and asked, "Captain, did you sleep here last night? Was the company too busy?" Qin Mo didn't answer him. Instead, he turned sideways and pressed the company phone on the desk. "Prepare a set of clothes for me and send them up immediately." "Yes." Secretary Liang was very efficient. Qin Mo took the shirt from his hands, his fingers fiddling with the sleeves, buttoning them up one by one. Then he said slowly, "Spade Z asked to meet me." "What?" Bang! Coco and Fatty stood up from their chairs at the same time. Meeting? The kind of meeting between online gamers? This was too unreal. Could it be a trap? This guy is very sly. Coco guessed. Fatty agreed. CEO Qin, let's bring more people. We can't let him escape this time. Do you think I wouldn't notice if it was a trap? Or? Qin Mo looked up casually, and his eyes were cold. Are you reminding me of the time I was tricked? Coco and Fatty froze at the same time, and their scalps went numb. No, sob, the CEO is so scary today. At the same time, the last class had started. Usually, at this time, no one was in the mood to study. Everyone was looking down at the time on their phones. Fu Jiu was no exception. After all, she had an appointment. The English teacher knew that they couldn't listen anymore, so he thought of a few questions to lighten the mood. Then he called Fu Jiu up. "What kind of girl do you like? What type of girl do you like?" Everyone in the class knew that Fu Jiu was always the last in the exams. He couldn't understand English at all. Although some girls were interested in this question, they knew that Fu Jiu couldn't answer it. Jiang Feiyang sat next to Fu Jiu, looking like he was watching a good show. Shui Tingting was anxious. She took out a pen and poked at Fu Jiu's uniform from behind, writing one word on the paper, beautiful. As long as Fu Jiu could answer with one word, she would pass. But she was afraid that Fu Jiu didn't even know this word. The teacher was also looking at her. Fu Jiu smiled. Her thin lips parted, and she spoke fluent English. Do you think I don't have feelings just because I'm poor and ugly? If God had given me beauty and wealth, I would have made it as hard for you to leave me as it is now for me to leave you. Her voice had always been pleasant to listen to. Now that she was using an authentic British accent to slowly recite those sentences, it was full of exotic magnetism. Almost all the students in the class were intoxicated by it. This is. The English teacher was very excited. The original sentence from Jane Eyre. It seems like the teacher likes this book very much. The heroine in the book is my type. Fu Jiu was still smiling, and she winked at Shui Tingting behind her. So handsome and bewitching. Chapter 37. The English teacher took the lead in applauding and gave unprecedented affirmation, asking the students to learn from Fu Jiu. Jiang Feiyang's eyes widened. He originally wanted to see a joke, but he didn't expect to see this little weakling in the limelight. Fu Jiu sat down, glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, and curled up her thin lips. That obvious mockery made Jiang Feiyang feel like his face was about to be slapped swollen. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he actually thought that Fu Jiu looked good like that. Was he crazy? Alright, students, this class ends here. Class dismissed. With one sentence from the English teacher, the students flooded out of the classroom. Fu Jiu took her school bag and threw it behind her handsomely. She still had her skateboard under her arm, and she slowly walked into the crowd. Chen Xiaodong was already waiting at the teaching building. Young master, where are you going? Wait for me. Fu Jiu stopped in her tracks. Many girls looked at him with blushing faces, and they stopped as well. Chen Xiaodong paused for a moment. Did he see it wrong? Why do all these female students look so shy? Young master. Chen Xiaodong lowered his voice. What did you do this time? Did you hit on girls? Fu Jiu took out her phone and replied lazily, no. Alright, Chen Xiaodong said seriously. I trust you. Then, young master, where are we going now? Are we going to Computer City to buy parts? I don't know why, but young master seems to be very interested in these things recently. Fu Jiu opened WeChat and looked at the words, I'm here. She smiled. Before buying parts, let's go see someone first. Chen Xiaodong responded with an, oh, completely unaware of the next critical attack. Who are you meeting? Qin Mo, Fu Jiu only gave him 2 words and walked away. Chen Xiaodong suddenly froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Even his expression was magnified to the extreme. Young master, wait, calm down. Young master Qin will treat you like a pervert and beat you into a bun. At the same time. At the gate of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. A pure black Hummer with smooth lines was parked on the side of the road like a fierce tiger. The license plate number was white with red letters, and there were bodyguards standing around the car. His aura was shocking. But even so, it couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the students. It's Almighty Qin's car. Ah! I'm going crazy. Qin Mo was really popular, just like a superstar. As soon as he appeared, someone would pick up their phone to take pictures. No matter if it was a man or a woman, after seeing him play, no one would not love him. However, no matter how many people gathered outside, Qin Mo, on the Hummer, remained unmoved. He was sitting in the back seat. His nose bridge was straight, and his face was handsome. He looked like he was asleep. One of his hands was supporting his face lazily, and the other was resting on his long legs. His long and narrow eyes were slightly closed, and he looked very careless. But when his WeChat beeped, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as evil as the night, as though he could see through everything in this world. Chin Mo unlocked his phone, a line of words appearing on the screen. I'm heading that way now. Coco, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also heard the sound, and for some reason, he became excited. I've been playing games for so long, but this is the first time I've met an in-game character. What does Spadesy look like? It couldn't be a burly man, right? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.